Hey,
Yeah,
it was just me.
We'll officially get started on a little couple of housekeeping.
So I said I should give you one of these. Some interesting numbers I pulled together.
Keep it please quiet. Secondly, to save money, the town has not printed mass copies of the warrant articles. What they intended to do is save that money, and they've got a PowerPoint presentation that they'll be going through article by article. I realize that's a shift this year for many of us, but that's what they've done. The second thing is the articles are on the website if you want them. Some of you are so technically proficient, like my daughters wouldn't let that bother them. They'd already have the website up and the articles in front of them if you're looking at it electronically, so that's a possibility. It's your meeting, and if in the future you do want paper copies, I think you take a straw poll. How many people would like a paper copy even in the future? Raise your hands, Dr. Bell. Okay, people who were good with no paper copies? One, two, three. Okay, so we're in a position of transition between paper and technology, and I'm sure the town will take that into consideration. The second question that was asked is because we don't normally start at this early in the morning, it's always 1 o'clock in the afternoon. What are we going to do about bathroom breaks? It's your meeting. You can get up and leave it anytime you want. But if you're in a position that you want to go to the bathroom, but you don't want the meeting to go on, i.e. you're going to miss something, just anyone at any time can raise point of order, is just, that's the word, and say, we have a bathroom break, 5-minute recess, and I bet there'll be 10 other people in the room who think the same thing at the same time. So let's handle it that way. You don't have to, you can ignore the signs on the walls to stop, do not leave without a pass, and all those things. Given those 2 minutes, show is back, so I can actually start. Big breath, Michelle. Let the minutes reflect 9:17 as we were starting. Am I projecting well? Can you hear me over the mic? Thank you. Milton Deliberative Session, February 10th, 2018. Would you all rise to the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like the room to honor a moment of silence for those we lost in the past year, namely Betty White, former Citizen of the Year. She died out of town, I believe down in Texas, but she was buried last summer in New Bridge Chapel in cemetery. And Leo Lassard, our former selectman, former state senator, former moderator, former everything, gave many, many hours of service to this town. Homeless hours. Thank you.
Mr. Jacobs?
Yes.
Excuse me. Llewellyn Snyder?
Lou Snyder.
Thank you, sir.
And Nancy Johnson.
Yeah.
Art Downs. And Art Downs. Thank you. You know, that's great that we do remember, because we are more of a poor citizenry than some other communities. Thank you. I have a moment myself. All right, please cell phones to silent mode. If you must take a call, please exit the room to complete your call. It's also been pointed out to me today that there'll be a number of people texting, and some people may consider that improper, but I can remember years ago when I had sitters at home texting was the way to keep track of the chaos. Or you may have family members who are ill or other things going on in your life. So I respect, and please respect others if they are in fact texting. There could be multiple things going on in their lives. And I thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to attend here with us this morning. There is no smoking allowed within the building. Again, remember that we're on school property. I'm not intimately aware of what the school rule is, but as an adult, please practice some consideration. Introductions. I am your moderator. My name is Chris Jacobs. The selectmen with us today are Andrew Rawson, Brian Tebow, and Fred, I call him Tim Long. Town Administrator, Heather Tebow. Town Legal Counsel is Walter Mitchell. Budget Committee, Larry Brown is the chairman. Robert Carrier. Andrew Rawson is the selectman's representative. Peg Bird is the school board representative. Dan's not with us today. He is the water district representative. Aaron Hutchins, Dennis Wing, Thomas McDougall. Thomas is helping us with the recording of this today, and Sean Peralta. Supervisors of the checklist. Karen Brown is with us out at the table. No one else with you today? State representatives, Mr. Robert Graham, I don't know if I saw him in the room. Fire Chief Nick Murray is with us. Public Works Director Pat Smith is with us today, and Police Chief Richard Krause is with us today. General announcements. There will be a candidates forum for all candidates running for school district and town offices on Thursday, February 26, 2018, in the Selectmen's Meeting Room of Town Hall at 6:30 p.m. The forum may be video recorded for later rebroadcast on our local channel network. I will be moderating that session also. Deliberative session.
Thursday, Monday, the 26th. Monday, the 26th.
See how many times you can read your own notes? Yeah, it's Monday, February 26th. Thank you for that correction. School teachers are always correct. But that's their job. Deliberative session rules. We are under provisions of SB 2. There is no final vote on the items discussed today until March 13, 2018. All questions will be directed to myself, the moderator. As moderator, I will not vote except to break the topic. To vote today, you will need to check in at the supervisor of the checklist table and raise your colored ballots. The color today is red. Please be courteous to all present. Speak only to the warrant on the floor, or you will be ruled out of order. If you wish to speak, please state your name. You must use the microphone right here in front so that you can be heard by all present. Each speaker, everyone will speak only once until everyone else has had a chance to speak. Please be brief. I will not recognize a motion to move the question when it's clear that others wish to speak. The motion will only be recognized when everyone who wishes to speak has done so at least once. I will read each warrant article in full. I will then recognize a motion to open the warrant article for discussion and recognize a second to that motion and take your vote by your colored ballot. After a period of discussion and questions, the warrant will be open to amendments. All amendments must be in writing. I already have several in front of me. There will be no amendments to amendments. You can only do one at a time. Before the vote to amend an article, I will read the warrant article in full. After all persons present have had an opportunity to speak to the article, I then recognize a motion to close the warrant article for discussion. Recognize a second to that motion. If the warrant article has been amended, I will read the warrant article in full with any approved amendments before the vote. Michelle, if you're looking for these, I saw it. What she did with them. After discussions have ended, I will instruct the clerk to place the warrant article on the second session ballot as read or amended. If you desire to vote by secret ballot on any article up for amendment, I need the request in writing and signed by no less than 5 registered voters. We would like to have the request presented at this time so that the supervisors of the checklist can verify the registered voters on the actual request. That's why we have the ballot booths set up on that side. Again, under SB2, no final votes will be taken until March 13, 2018. You may wish to limit reconsideration. Under RSA 40:10, you can move to restrict reconsideration. This will only limit further reconsideration for today only. Restricting reconsideration can only postpone a second vote to a reconvened meeting held at least 7 days from now. If you move to restrict reconsideration, you cannot bring it back to the floor today, even if it's for a good reason, such as a math error. We have had that occur here in the past. Are there any questions with respect to the procedures?
I missed it perhaps, but in the past, my understanding was the amendments were only about the amount.
No, you can amend, like, let's say we were talking about roads, which roads get paved under a paving article. You can add a road or delete a road,
Okay.
just as long as you don't change the intent of the article. 10 or plus years ago, we used to have motions from the floor to restrict everything after the words to see. And the vote, those questions would still end up on the ballot as to see. The legislature ruled that that's not really fair. It's not consistent with good government to restrict all the wording out of an article. So it's essentially defeated and give the rest of the voters no opportunity to review the article. So yes, you can take out all of the money out of an article. You can add 10% more to an article. Those are about the things that you can do. Add and delete street names, correct for bad spelling, wording, that sort of thing. Okay. Thank you for the question. I am moderator, and while I run the meeting, I can be overruled by a point of order at any time by a majority vote. That has happened in the past also, so please feel free to use that point of order. If anyone ever says that, the meeting literally has to stop and address whatever that point of order is. So it is your meeting, it's under your control. I'm going to start to read the warrant articles. To the inhabitants of the town of Milton, the county of Stratford, and said statute qualified to vote in town affairs. First session. You are hereby notified of the first session, the deliberative session of the annual town meeting, which will be held on Saturday, February 10th, 2018, beginning at 9 a.m. at the new high school. The first session will consist of explanation, discussion, and debate of each of the following warrant articles, and will also afford voters who are present the opportunity to propose, debate, and adopt amendments to warrant articles, except those articles whose wording is prescribed by state law. Second session. The second session of the annual town meeting to elect town officers by official ballot and vote on all warrant articles as they may be amended at the first session will be held on Tuesday, March 13, 2018, at the Milton Assembly of God Church at 370 White Mountain Highway. Polls for voting by official ballot will open at 8 a.m. and close by 7 p.m. Before I read the first article, I need to bring to the voters' attention that we have a number of persons in the room who are not eligible to vote but may wish to speak to one or more of the articles, meaning non-residents of the town, people that may have worked for the town or are here to advise us on certain articles. Those persons that I am currently aware of are Walter Mitchell, town attorney, Heather Thibodeau, are you an administrator or manager? Administrator, and Kathy Walford. Are there any others? Mr. Krause? Any others? At this time, I would like to accept the motion to permit those persons so mentioned to speak at one or more articles today as requested by at least one voter. Mr. Gray, move that up. Motion. All those in favor, raise your ballots. Opposed? Unanimous, you are allowing those people to speak. Just Mr. Gray, I was just looking for a motion to bring it to the floor. Didn't ask for a second. Article 1, choose all necessary town officers for the ensuing year for which there are vacancies for such terms as may be permitted by law. Running for Board of Selectmen. You elect one person for 1 year, 3 candidates, Lawrence D. Brown. I'm not running it, so who's got the clicker?
We don't have that.
They did not compare that as a problem, so. Yeah, I think in the past I haven't even read the names. Lawrence Brown, Andy Lucier, and Thomas McDougall. One position for a 3-year, Aaron Hutchins and Andrew Rawson. Budget Committee, one person for 1 year, Sean Peralt. 2 people for 3-year terms. Both of those positions are open. There is no one applied for those positions. Cemetery Trustee, 1 year, one person for a 3-year term, John Catwick and Dennis Therian. Fire Chief, one person for 1 year, Stephen Deschano and Nicholas Marie. Library Trustee, one person for 3 years, Nancy Drew. Moderator, one person for 2 years, Chris Jacobs. Planning Board, 2 positions open for 3-year terms, Matthew Morrill and Lynette McDougall. Public Works Director, one person for 3 years, Pat Smith. Supervisor of the Checklist, one position for a 4-year term, it's open. One position for a 6-year term, Brittany Leach. Treasurer, one person for 1 year, Emerald J. Arnold, and Mackenzie Campbell. Trustee of the Trust Fund, one position for a 3-year term, Marion Trafton. Zoning Board of Adjustment, one position for a 2-year term, Stephen Baker. 2 positions for 3 years, Lawrence Brown and Stanley Nader. Lawrence D. Brown. I will instruct the clerk to place warrant article 1 on the second session ballot as read. Article 2, zoning item 1. Are you in favor of the adoption of amendment number 1 as proposed by the planning board for the town zoning ordinance as follows? To amend Milton zoning ordinance by adding a new article XXI entitled Accessory Dwelling Units, which makes an accessory dwelling unit a permitted use by right in conjunction with any permissible single-family dwelling while maintaining the visual and functional character of the single-family residential neighborhoods as required by a 2016 state statute, RSA 674:71 to 73. Copies of the complete text of amendment number 1 are available for review at the town office and will be available the day of the election. Majority vote required. It's recommended by the planning board 5-0. It's recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. Motion made to open Article 2 for discussion by Ryan. Seconded by Andy Rossi. All those in favor of opening the article for discussion, please raise your ballots. Opposed? You have opened Article 2 for discussion. I'll recognize Ryan to vote. Speak to the article if you have anything.
My card pretty straightforward.
Ryan feels it's pretty straightforward. I'll, at this time, entertain any questions from the floor. Yes.
Judy Glover. Only because I'm a real estate appraiser, I understand that this is a state statute. I think a lot of people don't understand that or know that, so maybe it needs to be brought to the attention of the public because we haven't had to vote. I'm assuming, just by reading the article, that it's taking the state statute and they're just putting the town's requirements on top of that. But I just would ask that question if that's actually true. So even if the town votes this down, we are still obligated under state statute to allow without the town's limitations or parameters that they put down. Thank you.
So the answer to that question was essentially yes. I work for another community, we've adopted it. The only things that we require is, you're still going to need to go through the building permit process. You still need to conform with life safety codes as far as additional accesses in or out. You still have to comply with the state wastewater rules, subsurface septic systems. So if you've only built a 2-bedroom house and you're about to put in a mother-in-law apartment over the garage, you have to show the state that your septic system either can handle it or expand your septic system. So those types of rules are inherent with it. It isn't like carte blanche. Please don't go out tomorrow and buy a pallet load of wood from Home Depot and begin construction, because it's not that liberal of a law. Because we've had people do it. Your meeting. No further questions, comments? Boys and girls are going. Motion made to close Article 2 for discussion by Michelle. Second by Tom Gray. All those in favor of the motion to close discussion, please raise your ballots. Anyone opposed? You have closed discussion on Article 2. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 2 on the second session ballot as read. Is there a motion to restrict reconsideration? So moved. Mr. Brown. Second. Mr. Gray. All those in favor of closing Article 2 to further consideration? Opposed? You have closed consideration on Article 2. Moving on to Article 3, which is zoning item number 2. Are you in favor of the adoption of amendment number 2 as proposed by the planning board for the town zoning ordinance as follows? To amend Article XVI, Groundwater Protection Overlay District, by updating all sections to ensure compliance with current state statutes and administrative rules, to amend Section 3, definitions, to add and delete definitions as required by statute, to amend Section 4, Groundwater Protection Overlay District, to add wellhead protection areas, and to add a 1,000-foot radius around wells for blasting activities, to amend Section 6, performance standards, by updating to reflect current best management practices for stormwater protection, including those pertaining to regulated substances, and by adding a requirement for projects to prepare a groundwater monitoring plan when excavating or blasting within 1,000 feet of municipal wells. Pause. To amend Section 6, Section B, to correct an error, to amend Section XVI, effective date, by adding date of enactment, amendment, and various revisions were made through the text to identify updated reference documents or sections. Copies of the complete text or amendment 2 are available for review at the town office and will be available before the election. Majority vote is required. I do recall seeing, I believe, these warrant articles in paper form at the back of the table. And recommended by the planning board 5-0, recommended by the board of selectmen 3-0. Is there a motion to open Article 3 for discussion?
I move to place Article 3 for discussion.
Andy, seconded by Mr. Long. All those in favor of the motion to open discussion, please raise your ballots. Opposed? Let's open discussion. Moderator recognizes Selectman Long. Do you want to speak to this?
The purpose of this ordinance is to preserve, maintain, and protect.
You're going to have to use the microphone.
The purpose of this ordinance is to preserve, maintain, and protect existing and potential groundwater supplies and related groundwater recharge areas within the town, and prevent development and land use practices that would continue contaminate and reduce recharge of identified aquifers. It's pretty simple. We want to protect and maintain groundwater and the aquifer. That's the purpose of this particular law. Thank you.
Bill before.
My name is Bruce Woodruff. I serve as the town planner. You can probably tell that I wrote that for the planning board because of my German background in college. It's just a long sentence. But really what it does is it really explains to you all of the things that were done to update our existing groundwater protection overlay district regulations contained in the zoning ordinance. So that's something that you need to know. We already have a groundwater protection regulation in the ordinance, but it's out of date. It's out of date mainly because of three things. New Hampshire RSAs have changed since 2004. Best management practices by the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services have come a long way in about 13 years. And finally, the regulations that DES, that Department of Environmental Services, have also changed. So our ordinance was out of date. But in addition to that, the most important thing that I see that in all those words is the groundwater monitoring plan that is required of a developer who is going to blast near our aquifers of town. They need to do that now, and that's the most important piece here, I think. The background on the whole thing was that it started with the Conservation Division back in 2015. They went to the Stratford Regional Planning Commission and got some help. And ultimately, it has to go to the planning board, because the planning board is really the only agency for the town that can send zoning ordinances, amendments to the people. And that was done this past year in 2017. It's a law document, but it's really good for the town. And I'll take any questions if anyone has.
Thank you, Bruce. I just have one. 5 minutes. So if in the 50 years from now, the town gets sewer top to bottom, is there any exemption for a town project, say, or just do you envision? My concern is, would it be prohibited, let's say, blasting for putting in additional water lines, putting in additional sewer lines, or?
No. As a matter of fact, blasting is not prohibited. What is prohibited is, it could be the town. It could be the town or a developer or a homeowner who needs to blast something. If they're within 1,000 feet of one of our water wells, they have to do a groundwater monitoring and have an engineer do that. They can well aware. That's to ensure that bad things don't happen to our municipal wells.
Okay. Thank you. Questions, comments, concerns? Comments?
Does this protection extend only to municipal wells that would feed, say, the public water system, or do they extend to residential wells such as what I've got feeding my house?
It does not.
Okay, thank you.
If someone were to put in I know the state considers about 20,000 gallons a day withdraw a high capacity well, like let's say for a water company or a brewery. Would this apply to that high capacity well?
Yes.
Further questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close Article 3 for discussion. Michael. That one.
Favor.
Second? Mr. Brown. All those in favor of the motion to close Article 3 for further discussion, raise your ballots. Opposed? We have closed discussion of Article 3. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 3 on the second session ballot as read. Is there a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 3? Ms. Brown, seconded by Mr. Ms. Brown made the motion. Mr. Brown, not related. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? We have closed Article 3 to further reconsideration. Article 4, the operating budget. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate as an operating budget $4,508,000 $4,508,365, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations as voted separately. The amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by the vote of the first session. Should the article be defeated, the default budget shall be $4,534,914, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action by the town or law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with 4013 sections X and XVI to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Bruce, you have a...
No, the words for the amount and the dollar and the digits for the amount are not the same.
It sounds like it.
Need to be fixed.
Time for an amendment. Majority vote is required, as recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 7-2. Is there a motion to open Article 4 discussion by Mr. Lawrence D. Brown, second by Ms. Karen Brown. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your ballots. All those opposed? We have opened Article 4 for discussion.
Brian McQuaid. For those who don't know, I serve on the cemetery trustees and the zoning board. Would it be in order to make comments and the motion at this time?
It would for motion.
Okay.
Comments certainly, but any motion or amendment would have to be right.
Okay, so I'd like to motion that the operating budget be reduced by $450,836 to reflect a total operating budget of $4,057,529 with the actual proper written out words.
Your presentation is not being posted. Just so you know, this is not what the your presentation.
Okay, they told me that what I read, what I got sent, what I pasted into my article is
No,
not.
you read correctly.
I read
This
correct.
is incorrect.
This was the original one, I didn't update it for.
Oh, good.
Right. So it's-
God loves, so okay, so what I read is correct. That was thank you, Bruce. I thought that what I always think I'm a mistake. You know? It's like at home, you know, something goes wrong. That had something to do with it, you know? Even if it wasn't my fault. No fault. The girls are upset. All right. So there's a...
Repeat that number first.
Sure. You want me to read it?
Yeah.
Okay. The motion is to adjust the operating budget, be reduced by $450,836 to a new, reflecting a new total operating budget of $4,057,529. Right? Okay, we have an amendment. Is there a second to the amendment so that we can discuss it? Your name for the record? Nancy Wynn. I thought so. Try not to be presumptuous. All those in favor of discussing Amendment 1 of Article 4, raise your ballots. Anyone opposed? Amendment 1 is on the floor for discussion. Go ahead. You want to?
I have just a few notes on there.
Take that.
So, personally, my comments are, I've spoken with a few people that no longer live here, someone who's actually has their house up for sale, and a few more who are thinking of putting up for sale because they can't afford the taxes here anymore. A friend of mine also had a few notes. He did a little digging for me. Wasn't able to make the meeting, so I'm reading them for him. The town tax rate chart shows a 56% increase over a 10-year period. Over that same time period, nominal wages rose 26% and inflation officially rose 19%. So property taxes rose at more than double the rate of nominal wages and nearly triple the rate of inflation. So as things running as they are now, the new flash valuation as well is pretty much hockey stick this trend line upwards, and there are plenty of people I believe that would like to see some action on this, which is why I'm making it. Thank you.
We need that back.
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
You have to use the mic. Thank you. The primary question is, apart from the individual reactions of people who are no longer here or who are facing financial difficulties, what is your assessment, category by category, point by point, of the operating expenses of the budget presented over the past year to the Budget Committee, where you have a detailed plan that such and such an expense is too high and should be reduced? I look forward to any detailed presentation of that, rather than a generic whitewash brush.
In point of order, that question was directed at the moderator. Someone from the audience who proposed one, you can choose to address it or not to address it. Again, you cannot make this a personal attack, but do you have any information?
At the point of saving time, I would just say that my detailed plan involves keeping as much of my money as possible.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So 2017 is the first time I was on the Budget Committee. And as much as I attempted to address individual line items, which I thought were too high, sorry, Sean Perot, not Perot. So I tried to identify line item by line item, which items I thought were too high or needed to be really looked at a little more closely. However, I was always told that we deal with a bottom line budget when you're on the Budget Committee. So I don't believe that requesting somebody in the public to come in and give a line item, budget line by budget line, it's almost hypocritical. So, well done, thank you.
Sir.
So, name is David Carpus. Interestingly, independent of this, I did not know this kind of topic was going to be coming up. I tried to pull, what is it, the MS 737s, the time revenue reports from neighboring towns. New Durham, our town, Wakefield, and Farmington. And to balance it out, also pulled the census numbers for the population so that we're comparing apples to apples instead of apples to oranges. And on a per person basis, given those 4 towns, we're not the highest, we're the second highest. On a per person basis, if you look at just fire, police, general government, highway and streets, and sanitation. So this is not counting the tax rate related to schools or anything like this. This is just like the key items, the top items. So just, there's one example. I don't know whether or not the Budget Committee compares our budget to other towns to go, are we high or are we not high? So it's more relevant to than just somebody can't afford to pay the property taxes is, are we increasing faster than everybody else? And how do we match up compared to other people? And I understand that the statement made by the budget, we're a bottom line budget committee because of the fact that money can get moved at any time by the selectmen. They can't move money into a zero item budget. If you zero out an item, they don't get to move money into it. So, just a point of order to have somebody, I don't know whether or not analysis has been done to compare how we compare to other towns. This is what jumped out at me in certain instances. In general, not saying they're doing a bad job, police and fire are higher than most other towns around here, and our public works and sanitation and stuff is much lower than the towns around, based on this number on a per person basis. So, suggestion for a future, or I don't know how it can impact this conversation now, is that kind of information.
Okay. Judy.
Judy Lover, I think as we look at the budget for the town, we have to look at the whole picture. Maybe everybody doesn't really look at that. We have articles that were voted in the past, most recently the fire station, and as that bond gets paid, the interest rate, the interest that we pay on it drops. And so that affects our tax rate. When you're comparing town by town operating budget and overall tax rates, you should not look beyond Stratford County. When you're talking about Wakefield, they have a huge tax base up there, waterfront properties, and their tax rate is so low compared to any of the towns in this area, Farmington, Middleton, New Durham, Milton, Rochester even, and they're a different county. So that impacts taxes that we pay in this town, the county rate. And a huge portion of your tax is based on market value, and right now, market values of property are strong, and they're continuing to stay in the strong, stable area. You're not seeing a decline in value. So your property is worth more money now than it was 5 years ago or even 10 years ago. And all of that impacts what you actually pay for taxes on your property. So it's more than just an operating budget. And I just wanted people to look at the whole scope.
Thank you. Further comments, questions? Dan Walsh.
Dan Walsh. If this motion were to pass and the article ended up passing in March, could the selectmen give us any idea what kind of cuts they would have to make to, or what areas would have to be cut to accommodate this cut?
Go ahead. We're gonna put up a slide. Everybody's gonna see. I can find it right now.
Good morning. Unfortunately, we heard this might be coming up. So we all heard how upset people were when the tax rate hit and the impact of what the assessments were. And the department had sat down and we all knew that people were devastated. We were upset too. And we've taken corrective action to try to work with people because we know that people are upset. The department had worked very hard to work for the taxpayers in this town. So we sat down and we looked at what was going on. We looked at the bottom line budget. And we all sat down and said, what would these impacts be if we ended up with a 10% cut? And everybody is going to be hit. These are some of the cuts that we'd be looking at and how it would hit each department. and how it hit all the residents in town. Every department would see some cut, and all services would be cut. And if services are cut, it's going to hit everybody, all the services in town. And how that's going to hit each and every one of you and the services you have come to expect from the town, unfortunately, they're not going to be at the level that you've come to expect. The recreation? Oh, sorry. For instance, these are some of the things that would happen. The town clerk's hours would cut. There'd be no Thursday evening hours to come register your car. Things like Friday hours would be cut. No last Saturday of the month. Would end up with a cut there of probably over $10,000. Assessing salary. Basically, that department would be, other than having our contracted assessor, we'd eliminate that department. Would end up cutting probably over $40,000. So there'd be no training, printing, supplies, postage, equipment maintenance, purchases, mileage, everything would be cut. We'd have this to the bare minimum. That wouldn't be very helpful when you come in and want to talk to somebody. Police department would have drastic cuts. We'd end up with 5 officers and a chief of police. Coverage split would be among 6 persons, including the chief. Retirement cuts would be down. We'd lose 2 police officers. That'd be devastating for this town. Fire department. They go down from, the assistant chief's hours would go from 22 hours to 11 hours a week. Delay in the EMS billing, resulting in no funding. Delay in fire inspections, including place of assembly permits. EMS coverage, elimination of night coverage, resulting in increased emergency call response time at night. Decrease in ambulance revenue, resulting in loss of daytime ambulance staffing. Unfortunately, we all know what's happening in this town for ambulance calls. We have a real problem everywhere right now when the ambulance is needed. I think our fire chief can tell you how many calls he got Christmas Eve.
Fair enough.
Planning and code. Cut full-time and part-time salary and all associated costs. Eliminate all other costs, training, registry of deeds, postage, equipment maintenance, equipment purchases, mileage, travel, membership, and dues, and miscellaneous. What would remain? Contract services, notice and ads, professional services, printing and copying and supplies. Basically, we wouldn't have a code department anymore. We'd just have police to enforce what we have with our limited police department for what was left. Highway department. This is the time of year where I get all kinds of calls about our highway department and the roads. Nobody likes the roads in the winter anyway. For fact. They're doing the best they can. They cut, strictly by doing sanding only, and we know we have cuts there as well. Talk to our DPW director. Solid waste. Eliminate part-time salaries. Transfer station hours will only be open on Friday and Saturday probably. I can tell you, I personally do not live in Milton, most of you know that. I live in a town that has very limited transfer station hours. It's not pretty. If you miss those limited hours, your garage filled, and it's not a good thing. We wouldn't be able to give any outside appropriations. Stratford County CAF, which helps us enormously. Homemakers Health Services, paving, H Response Seacoast, Cornerstone DNA, Youth Sponsorship, American Legion, CASA, Wakefield Resource Center, Food Pantry. All of this would be gone. The Recreation Department. There'd be another casualty. Those of you that depend on the Recreation Department for a lot of things, the senior lunch program, bingo, they'd be cut. I mean, camp, that'd be another casualty. I mean, those are the things that would happen. The library. I personally believe the library the strength of your library really says a lot about the character of your community. I had that conversation with Betsy. It was a pretty conversation we had this fall. Those are the cuts you're talking about by taking something like this to happen. It's not something the town wants to do, but if that's the type of 10% cut we're going to have, those are the kinds of cuts that we're going to have to really sit down and make. It's not a pretty picture, it's not something the town wants to do. But those are the kinds of services that we're being forced to cut. Thank you.
I just want to let everyone know that despite fear you may have, or fear that may have been instilled by this beautiful graph up here, many, if not most, or all of these things can be filled by either private services. Many are not. Many of these services are not used now or want to be used, and so for things like there's private security, you can get trash picked up. Now you're not wasting your time driving to the transfer station. There are the library and the food needs. These are already settled by many donations and things like that. And if I had more of my money, I could do with it what I want. Thank you.
Before I get this done, do you want to speak? I'm just trying to get as many, no, please. Thank you.
Hi, Pete Hayward. Not to either speak in favor or against this, but the issue that is not really shown here and can't get at by line determination is prioritizations. What's important versus what's not important. So when you split a reduction and increase across all departments, and then ask for some back, you don't get top to bottom prioritization. So are we funding the things that are important across all the departments, not just whatever falls out of the bottom in each department? So we're never going to get to that on a line by line. The only way you get to that is across the board.
Perfect. Thank you. Tom, I was around for you where you are. Could you adjust that mic so it stands higher and people can just the court? Oh, there it is. Okay, there you go. All right. Oh, look at that. I didn't think it was adjusting that one.
Okay, one last little piece with the numbers that I pulled up, by the way, when I guess I should have clarified, when I indicated where the third most expensive, you, again, need to take it all relative. The difference between us and right in the middle, the per person to run the general government, not like on the categories I said, is 1%. So we're within 1 or 2% of almost all the towns around here when it comes to running the main portion of our government. So if the tax rate is high, that if you're looking at the tax rate, that's universally high across the board. Again, it would be useful to have comparative numbers. And the argument that was made earlier about can't compare ourselves to Wakefield, this isn't the tax rate numbers. This is how much money towns spend doing particular things. So if Wakefield's spending far less money than us on, I'm not, without looking at it, on their police, why? Maybe we should investigate that. I'm not saying that we're doing a bad job or our police is too expensive. Maybe they don't need the police as much because they're crime rates. We're not comparing numbers and looking at data across the board. And again, looking at a bottom line budget item isn't going to give you that answer. You need to compare to how much does our police pay. You know what, on a per call basis, we might have really cheap police officers. Unlike if they're answering 500 calls a month versus Wakefield might only be answering 200 calls a month. Okay, we're getting out cheap, but we don't have, there's not that data, and that would be useful data that might be useful to stop the complaints about the tax rate and the budget and everything else. But I haven't seen any of that information.
Thank you. Now it's too hot. See, it's always like that.
Hi, Wendy Abbott.
You can let it down more.
Wendy Abbott. I just had a question. In regards to the loss of the police department, fire department, some of the town hours, things like that, I think, I'm definitely, personally not willing to lose or give up, as well as some of, the other losses that we're talking about. My question is, are these definite losses, in these amounts, or are these proposed possible losses?
Maybe I can just quickly answer that. And given what was rumored that there would be a proposed tax cut, we put together this, if we had to quickly look at it, this is where we could cut. I do know when you're going to have different board of selectmen, possibly different board of selectmen. In March 13th, it would be them to sit down and go line by line item and say, town administrator as to where the actual cuts would be made. So I think the slide presentation was more of a scope of this is how wide the cuts would be. Is that a fair representation? I'm always saying that as a former selectman. So you know what your bottom line is and who your actual selectmen are, you don't make that decision until March. Fair enough. Thanks.
These are the recommendations that would have been made by the department heads.
Sure. I mean, when you and it's like, okay, I'm on the record, not to buy basketballs, so, but, let's say we decided we needed new basketballs because the other ones didn't bounce the recommended height. Well, then, okay, we forego new basketballs, and those are the kind of cuts that you make. Less.
It's a two-part question. What is the exact amount of the 10% cut, and how much money is in the fund balance now?
I can answer the first part of your question. The actual dollar amount proposed to be cut was, and I don't know if this is an exact, yeah, it is. $450,836 was the amount of the cut.
And what is the balance of the town's fund?
Undesignated fund balance? I don't know. Hasn't been audited, and Andy says approximately 1.1.
So you don't have to pay for the end of the year? Do you have an idea?
Andy says.
I mean, I can tell you what's in the fund balance today. I mean, is that attorney, is that feasible without asking what's in our fund balance? I mean, it's actually public record.
Well, say what you think is different, but it's not reliable because it's not reliable.
Right. I mean, would that be a fair statement? A fair
Tell me the figure wrong.
From the budget committee, the general fund CD certificate of deposit is $1,012,520.
That's the fund balance as of
No, it
December?
says general fund CD certificate
Oh, no,
of
I
deposit.
want the fund balance. Not the
General fund balance.
Two different areas. Fund balance and general.
The general fund balance as of 12/22/17, unaudited, to be clear, $4,816,949.
That's not the fund balance.
No, that's not.
The fund balance is a different. The fund balance is what the town keeps in reserve.
Thus, to the second question, what are your point about the fund balance?
Well, I'm just looking to see how much is in the fund balance.
How does that pertain, the rest of us are wondering, how does that pertain to the discussion at hand?
There would be enough, there's enough in the fund balance if this 10% budget cut went through. That's what the fund balance is there for.
Actually, you can't touch the fund balance.
Why? What is the reason to have it?
Well, this is a good question. I'll give you a short short, quick example, because it's not this town. I broke a force main down in Hampton, $4 million to fix it. We have $10 million in our fund balance. We would have had to go to Superior Court to get a special meeting to take money from the undesignated fund balance. When we sat down and figured out the amount of time it would take, it was close to 9 or 10 months. Unless there is specific wording at this meeting or some other meeting to specifically withdraw money from the undesignated fund balance, it cannot be touched unless the town is facing bankruptcy. When we called DRA said, well, you haven't spent down every cent. You haven't gotten to a zero checkbook balance. When you get close to it at about 100,000, give us a call, was their attitude. So it is literally your savings account that you cannot touch unless it's raised and appropriated or moved here, or if when setting the tax rate, the selectmen.
Well, that brings up another question.
Why did the selectmen just take out the $4 million and wipe out the taxes and have no tax bill this year?
The question is,
Go ahead.
if we eliminate all of the warrant articles that request funding to come from the general fund, that money then would not be taken from the general fund and would cause the general fund to rise or stay the same. Am I correct?
I'm not understanding your question. I have to.
Many of the warrant articles that we're discussing today have a request that at the very end of it, this money is to come from the general fund.
To raise and appropriate taxes to cover. Okay.
No taxes to be raised, but that's another question. The money is to be appropriated from the general fund.
But none of the warrant articles actually say that.
Yes. Which ones?
None of them. To my knowledge, do any of them say? Majority. I'll reread the warrant article. See if the town will raise and appropriate as an operating budget. So that means raised by taxes. That does not mean take out of the designated fund balance.
He's talking about the other warrant articles that we haven't actually covered so
Other warrant
far.
articles for capital reserve funds. The fund, the CIP,
Great. Article 8, to see if the town will raise and appropriate a sum of $15,000. That means, to the DRA, that means taxes.
not to come from the general fund.
That's what I've been trying to say.
Thank you.
For me. Well, no. We had the warrant article earlier, or a motion earlier on the request of one other voter to have someone who is not a town resident. Three selectmen were waiting fiercely. That gives this gentleman the right to speak. Please speak.
I just, not meaning to correct what Mr. Jacobs just said, but to clarify a little. There are articles in here, like number 8, and, number 11, 12, and 13, that say at the end, and the money that's being raised and appropriated in this particular article is not to come from taxation, but it's going to be taken by transfer from what's called the undesignated fund balance as of December 31 of a particular year. And those are those types of articles.
Yes, he's correct, I'm wrong.
That fund balance or undesignated fund balance or surplus is surplus. At the end of the year, what do you have coming forward from last year? How much extra, if there has been an extra, is there left over from the operating budget, and it goes into this fund balance.
You can't get it out of that fund balance except, to my recollection, 3 different ways. One, at tax rate setting time, the selectmen have the discretion up to some certain amount that's set by the DRA to say, we want to put so many hundreds of thousands of dollars from that fund balance toward reducing the tax rate. I have no idea what the history of that has been in Milton, and I have no idea what their fund balance is. Secondly, there is a statutory provision that says if you have an emergency where you're going to, it looks like you're going to be overspending the budget, you can apply to the DRA, Department of Revenue Administration, and get permission to use some of that fund balance to prevent that overspending. But clearly, if you're creating that emergency by reducing the operating budget, it might be a hard sell. And then the third way, as Mr. Jacobs referred to, is holding a special town meeting and raising and appropriating more money to come from the fund balance. But further insight.
So Les, I'll back up and be clear. Yes, there are, you point out to me, there are future articles where it says, even though we have the word really appropriate, it does designate where the funds come from. So that's what you were driving at. I do have to ask one point of clarification. How does that affect this amendment or reflect on this amendment? Because that's what we're discussing.
How does one affect? The fund balance?
How does that address this amendment?
How does one address that in this amendment?
This amendment is to lower the town operating budget by $450,000.
Right.
So you raised the point of, and I'm confused, I'm asking as president, how does the discussion of the future articles come from appropriations from the tax unassigned fund balance affect this particular amendment?
If those articles are not funded, that leaves additional funds for the general operation budget, which we're voting on now. Because those funds will still be left in the fund balance.
Undesignated fund balance.
Right.
Right. So they'll still stay in the town savings account, and you won't get your new tires.
You want what?
And you won't. If it's in your undesignated fund balance is like your savings account that you and your wife manage. I'm trying to think of a comparison. So if you need new tires, and yet you don't buy groceries for 2 weeks, if you still, I'm perplexed.
Let me throw a little more mud on that dead horse. The warrant articles, like number 8, that are asking for you to approve the warrant article on the provision that the money does not come from the operating budget means exactly that the money does not come from the operating budget. It is additional money which, for this calendar year, can be pulled out of the undesignated fund balance. If you believe that by voting down every warrant article that comes out of the unreserved fund balance, you have $450,000 available for calendar year 2018, you are wrong. So, what, if I remember correctly, the town is under the advisement of DRA to have a figure that varies on depending what part you read, anywhere from 5 to 15% of its operating budget as a savings account cushion. The town may, of its own authority, go down to 0 and hope that nothing breaks of such a substantial nature that you need that emergency account. And if I'm wrong on that, correct me more. But if you want to reduce next year's budget, come to the meetings. Every third Tuesday.
Mr. McClay, question again, I'm asking this as a resident, so it comes to the podium. The purpose of taking out the 450 was to impact the tax rate. It would lower the tax rate. Is it your intention?
My intention is to spend less and save more.
Okay, so in a result, you get a lower tax bill. This town budget is $4 million, the school budget's $9 million. If the intent is to impact my tax rate, my tax bill, as a resident, will you also be making a similar request to the school department to lower their? Just because the tax rate is not, my point is the tax rate is just not the town portion of the budget. It is, okay. All right, thank you. Gentleman behind you had another question.
No, just a comment from up here, and maybe somebody can correct me if I'm going to try an analogy here of the reserve fund is more like your parent savings account. It's like you have your own budget. If you run out of money, you can ask your parents for money, but you better have a good reason for it. They're not going to hand you just because you're not spending more of your parents' money on the capital expenditures like the additional articles. It's not something they mean. The money you have that you can allocate to your budget goes up by that amount, or it's reduced by that amount.
That's a better analogy than any I've heard. Bruce, and
This is a quick one, because I've been listening to the conversation. I think the important thing for me is the people that got elected to be in the budget committee. Can you remind us again what the vote was of the budget committee to recommend this operating budget in one article?
7-2.
72. Thank you.
in case anyone didn't get the vote on Article 4, operating budget was 7-2.
Just another quick point. If we have more money in the fund balance and we use the majority of that money to buy down the tax rate next year, we have to have that same amount of money the following year. So if we have $2 million and we spend $1 million to buy down the tax rate, we get a break for a year, but then you have to come up with that $1 million again next year.
You don't have to come up with it, but it would be a good idea to
Or
put the money back in
taxes
the
would go up.
savings account.
You'd have to raise $1 million in taxes the following year if you don't take it from the fund balance.
Oh, no. Okay. It's that way, I can agree with that. But it's his point. Yeah.
Thank you. I'd like to get back to Heather's diagram, and my first question is, the 10% reduction that's being discussed is a bottom line 10%, is that correct? It's a bottom line.
It is a bottom line 10%.
So Heather's graphic up here is by choice to exhibit what taking an equal 10% out of every department will theoretically look like.
4%, 9%, 11, 13, 9.
Okay, so,
23,
all right, so the point is, that's the point I'm questioning, is that's, for illustration purposes, a choice that she made to illustrate her point. Whereas nobody wants to see, for example, our police and fire and safety services cut by that percent. For the graphic, that's the number that she chose. Whereas actually, you could choose a very small cut of various departments and take larger cuts in departments where you're illustrating smaller cuts.
You could if you didn't have state laws. So for instance,
Okay.
the state says under RSA,
Solid waste.
whatever, the town has to have a solution for the residents to get rid of their solid waste. Basically says, okay, and our solution is turnkey landfill. So we have, the current process is you bring it to the transfer station. If, so that's mandated, if you will, under state law. The state does not say you have to have a library. The state doesn't say, you know, like planning. Planning is an internal affair of the government. It'd be nice to continue to have a planning board. It does say that you, if an application comes forward, you have X number of days to, you know, act on it. But those are the only things. And then there's other things that, obligations of the town. For instance, the note that we took out to build the fire station, that has to be paid above, note, your loans and your debts have to be paid ahead of buying new books or even opening up the library. So, I think we all wish it could be a straight 10% over the, but in practicality, it's probably not going to be that way.
Should we get back up there?
Sure. I mean, that's what this is for, is they discuss and understand what's on the floor.
The point that I was nicely trying to make is for illustrative purposes, we've all been scared by 23% for the police. When was that actually a choice for illustrative purposes? And in order to not scare us by 23%, that was sort of an arbitrary number, and it could have been 8%, and you could have distributed out your other 10% overall elsewhere.
Someone else?
So this one, I guess, this graph is a little bit better than part. You can see that my budget is almost a quarter of the town's budget, of the $4 million budget. So unfortunately, taking 10% out of my budget's going to have to give up more to come up with that $450,000 than any of the other budgets are going to come out. 2 officers is a big hit to our department, but because we're at almost a quarter of the town's overall budget, we're going to take the biggest hit. If you look at some of the other departments, aren't taking a small hit. Rec's not taking a small hit. The library's not taking a small hit. Assessing and planning, they're not taking small hits. Those departments are basically closing, so they're not taking small hits. To come up with $450,000, we had to find a lot of money, and unfortunately, again, I'm a quarter of the town's budget. So that's why my department takes the biggest hit.
Okay, actually, I just wanted to make sure that that pie chart wasn't
Misleading.
presenting a frightening worst-case scenario, that it was actually a practical, realistic view of what the 10% was going to be. That's my bot. That's the biggest thing I'm trying to understand.
Right. It's as practical and it's as practical as we can get to at this point. Like Chris said, this may not be the Board of Selectmen who have to make that decision. They could make a different decision on it. But as department heads, when we sit down and look at what's got to come out of our budget and what we can give up to come up with that number, to come up with $100,000 to come up with, or to come up with 10% of my budget. If I came up with 10% of my budget, we have to try and find more money in other departments that don't have that money. So that's why mine has to be a little bit higher. And to come up with that in my budget, I have to, it's personnel. That's if you look at my budget, probably about 70% of my budget is personnel. And that's
Thank you.
the
I
cost.
understand the explanation.
The other factor is there are legal contracts that we have to pay and debts that we have to pay. There's also state laws that certain things the town has to maintain. We have to maintain the core. So we have to make sure we fund that as well. So when we looked at taking this kind of money, because we heard well in advance about 10%, we knew that we had to make sure we had the money for the contracts, maintain what the state RSA said, and then we had to sit down and say, okay, what's left? And that meant wiping out departments, and that meant looking at what is absolutely left. So it isn't a pretty picture at all, and it is a cut in services, and it's just not
Yes, sir.
My name is Roger Mulder. I just want to present the thought of what no salt on the roads means, because I deal with that. That means you would have a skating rink out here instead of these bare pavements. That would affect your police response and your fire department response. Your school buses wouldn't be able to get down like Perry Hill Road. Tanneries wouldn't be passable. You would have major effects by not having just salt on the roads. That's it.
Further questions? Sir.
Hi, Eric Knapp. I guess I'm still a little bit confused. Mathematically, if you take 10% off the total bottom line of the budget, and that requires you to take 10% out of every department's budget. And then when you look at that graph, yes, you have a larger budget, cheap house, and so there's more taken out of that. But you would only have to do that if there were other departments that weren't doing anything at all. And then on the following slide, there weren't this many slices of that pie chart. So what isn't being done in that presentation?
There are parts of these that the town can't legally cut. So that's part of the problem. Debt services can't be cut. That's not something you can take 10% out of. So that's part of the problem. We can't take 10% out of everything on this slide. If we could, then you're right, we would just go 10% from every single line, and it would be less of a cut to the active department. But because we can't do that, we have to actually cut from where we can cut.
Thank you.
I'm Jenny Long, and I have a question for the Board of Selectmen or moderator or whoever, or the administrator, whoever can answer. I'd like to know what leeway or ability the town has to work with landowners who can't pay their property taxes. Can they reduce them? How can they work with them to perhaps address the problem of people moving out of town because they can't pay their property taxes?
I say good afternoon, but still morning. Good morning, folks. Thanks for coming today. I appreciate everybody's gathering here. First of all, I haven't had a chance to stand up, so I want to thank the moderator, Chris Davis, for running the budget meeting. Taking 10% out of, and I'll get to your question, Virginia. It's a good question. Taking 10% out of the budget would be detrimental to the town for many reasons. We've all talked about it. And it's going to explain, I can't explain it any better than the chief has already explained it. We as the Board of Selectmen work with the department heads to try to keep the budgets at a flat level. Unfortunately, they do go up a little bit every year for good reasons, for wages, health insurance purposes. Like Heather said, the contracts go up. We do work with the department heads, and they do a wonderful job. I can't think of, this town is so fortunate for the department heads that we have who really care about the community that we live in. So that being said, it would be very discouraging to see this pass. And if it's brought to the board from the school department, that it would be detrimental to the town. So, for your question, Virginia, we do work with the taxpayers who have problems paying their taxes, and it goes back to many board of selectmen before myself, where we can go into agreement, where, a taxpayer who's having problems paying their taxes, they come to the board of selectmen, and we can go into an agreement, and that's how we've gotten a lot of tax revenue in the past. So with someone just saying, I can't afford it, I'm not going to pay my taxes, and run the course, that's not a very good idea. And I'm glad you brought the question so we can get it out to the public. If you're having problems paying your taxes, please come to the town administrator, get on a non-public and come talk to the selectmen, and we can come into an agreement where what would fit your best needs to be able to pay, a little bit, whatever you have, and move forward with paying your taxes. Paying your taxes is very important. And so that's how we've I don't know if that's answered your question, but that's how we've done it in the past and today. Hopefully we can move the town forward. That doesn't really answer your question, Virginia.
Does the town have leeway to actually reduce property taxes? Or is it only a matter of over time, and per individual?
No, unfortunately, we just can't do that. We have to follow state guidelines. And we just can't forgive someone's taxes because they have problems. I mean, I wish we could. And it's a very hard decision for a board of selectmen to have to move forward with unfortunately beating someone's home. That's the last thing I ever want to do. But before we do that, please, if you're a resident and you want to, under the board of selectmen, there's always a way to be able to help a resident without losing their home if they to make the initiative, But it takes the initiative from the taxpayer. Kathy? Thank you.
Just so people know, though, we do have various exemptions and credits for property taxes if they want to stop in and see if they qualify for it.
Right. Thanks, Kathy. Go.
I'm not sure. How big is your increase this year compared to last year? What's the percentage you got talking about? Thank you. Mayor?
Let me read something handed to me by the selection. The 2018 budget represents an increase of $174,465 over the 17 budget. It's estimated, further down, right, yeah, 4%. Estimated tax impact, 41 cents per thousand. Homes worth 200,000 will see an increase of $82 for the year. Did that answer your question, Dan? Steve? Say again, Mike? Sure. This year's budget represents an increase of $174,465 over last year's 2017 budget. The estimated tax impact is 41 cents per thousand. Homes worth 200,000 would see an increase of $82 for the year. Steve?
I have a high tax bill. I don't like it. I've also been to some of the budget committee meetings, and I've been very impressed by how hard these people work to keep the taxes down. And for those people who are, like me, dissatisfied, I really advise you to go to some of those meetings, participate, and come up with some good ideas for reducing costs, because costs are just going up. And as much as I dislike my taxes, I can still pay them. I'm fortunate in that respect. But really, if you don't get involved in the process, this isn't the time to deal with it. I think that the town's budgeting, by and large, has been responsible, and to some degree, we're probably making up for taxes being too low in the past. Very complicated, difficult to just look at neighboring communities and see what they're doing without getting into a similar level of detailed analysis. But want to express my appreciation and confidence to the Budget Committee, who has an extremely difficult job, which frankly, I wouldn't be willing to do. So,
Sir. As a point of order, after my school meeting article, it's going to start at 1. It's now 10:45. We do have to move somewhat along.
Interestingly, tied in with what he said and you just said, another piece of information when I was doing some research, tied into tax rate and tied in with the school system, and to be honest, with the fire and police both. One of the things I was researching was pension, and the fact that what a lot of people don't realize is, as a whole, the pension program for years was significantly underfunded. And some of what's happening right now is we're paying for that screw up 10, 12 years ago. And the tax rate is a lot of that is having to do with compensating for the lack of funding for the pension program, which is not actually that high. If anybody bothers to go look at what people are making in terms of pensions, it's not that high. But a lot of a very large percentage of the tax rate is actually going towards that. It's a surprisingly small piece is actually going towards operating budgets and everything else. So I also encourage people not just to come to the budget committee, but to research some of that information on your own as well.
Is there anyone new wishing to speak to this amendment that's on the floor? One last time, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. I wanted to address the question of retirement costs. Over the last 10 years, you can pick a figure of either $4 billion or $5 billion, less of one way or the other, which represents the loss of general state revenues into the state retirement system. Right now, the costs of retirement have been driven down by the action of the state legislature and are impacting each and individual local community at a rate which a cynic would say is directly designed to ground government. So when you look at the costs of retirement, you are looking at a deliberate policy of the legislature of the state of New Hampshire to push retirement costs down to local property taxpayers rather than be funded out of the general income of the state.
Why don't you pay taxes?
Not ready for that just yet. As someone who does appreciate numbers and data analysis, and going back to what Mr. Brown talked about earlier, do we have access to the data with specifically what money's going where, like very fine data, or do we not have access to it?
No, yes, you have the town's audit, and then you have the year accounting as to where the actual money went.
And would that be where we should go if we want to look into shortening certain areas?
Sure, definitely.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. President.
That's a great question, Zane. Dennis Wing actually is a member of the Budget Committee. He has been taking all the data that our committee gets, puts it online, and puts links on our Milton Home into the Facebook group. So if anyone wants to look at that data at any time, go there, go to the top, it's probably pinned somewhere. We provide all the data that we see. So you can be as informed as we are.
All right.
It's your meeting.
I just want to, in closing, probably with this warrant article, Betsy, about how many people, this is Betsy, our librarian. You want me to stand for a moment, Betsy? Approximately, Betsy, how many people use the Milton Mills Library?
as far as number of patrons, I will say that in the past 6 to 8 years, depending on the year, it's anywhere from 3,700 to 4,000 people a year use the library. And they're using that library not only to borrow books, but we also do a number of educational programs. So we work closely with the schools. We have a number of community programs and also a number of community organizations that use the library as well.
Thank you. Really, that's one of the questions, Betsy. You know, we've worked really hard, Betsy and our Public Works Director, John, has done a lot of work with the library, and it would be detrimental for that library to be just shut down. We're working on fixing the library up through grants and through the funds of the taxpayers. We've done, you know,
And volunteerism.
Exactly, thank you, Betsy. And I just want to say that if the library was immediately closed, it would be hard. Not only for, I mean, the people in Milton Mills, you know, relying on little services like that because, you know, Milton Mills is out of the town of Milton and, you know, not that by any means we haven't forgotten about them, but it's just, that's one of the services that are up there that they depend on. And, you know, they have a little playground out front, the kids use it, so I just, like I said, again, I'm not in favor of this cut. You know, another source would be the rec department. You know, I just come from the basketball game that the rec department runs. They don't only do basketball, but they do, you know, soccer in the summer, t-ball. They run a various amount of camps at the lake. Karen, you know, I've been to many of dinners for the elderly at the Ramsey Center that is run by the rec department. Bingo. And I appreciate the ladies all up here knitting because it brings back memories of my mom, and I like to see that. So thank you. But anyways, it would be a huge loss for the town of Milton. So please, folks, just think about you know, this huge cut to the town, and I just want to say. No, just please think about it. Thank you.
Have the floor. Sorry.
Sean, this question's for you. You mentioned Dennis Wing's thing on his webpage. That's his personal webpage, isn't it? Or is it the town's webpage?
It's a personal.
So, let me know, please. Can you answer that?
Yeah, absolutely. So he links to web space that he purchases to host those files.
Okay, why don't we have that same information on our official webpage? Because I believe a lot of people go to other web pages that may give them information. It doesn't mean it's not accurate, but why not our own webpage? Why don't we have information about that? Because we're trying to get things that are accurate. I'm not saying he's not accurate. I think that he is. That's beside the point. The point is we need to go to one place for accuracy, legalities, and things like that.
Anyone new wishing to speak to this amendment? Final comments, quick, then I have to move the question.
Again, an attempt to pull on the heartstrings there. How much donation money was received to the library? How much volunteerism is done there? I mean, we've already heard comments that a lot of that is voluntary already, proving that we don't need all the bureaucracy. I'd like to call the question.
Point from Mr. McQuaid's moved the question, so that ends discussion. The point of order. Sorry, but probably true. All right, I'm going to reread the amended operating
Point of order, is it possible to ask the moderator overrule the poll by vote of those assembled?
It is possible.
Yeah. Ask
You
that.
may. Do you want to continue discussion on this item? Everyone raise your ballots. That's essentially ignoring the motion to call for a vote.
Can you repeat that, please?
Mr. McQuaid made a motion to move the question, which means call for a vote, to sort of end discussion on this amendment. And all you're going to vote on the amendment. You still have to take time to vote on the budget as a whole if this amendment does not pass. So Mr. Brown has asked a point of order. If he thinks others need to speak or should be allowed to speak, it is your meeting. All those in favor of wanting to continue deliberation, allowing others to speak, if you would raise your cards at this point. Just a point of order. Anyone opposed? I would say the nays have it. We're going to move the question. And I'm going to read the question in its full. This is to vote on the amendment. And I'll read the amended amount in the article. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate as an operating budget $4,057,529, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $4,534,914, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action or of the town or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with 40:13X and XVI to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only, majority vote required. So the amended article is on the floor. All those in favor, raise your ballots. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? Majority carries. That amendment fails. We are back to operating Article 4, unamended. Are there any further amendments to this article? Mr. Shute.
I want to move this question.
Second.
All right. So you're going to move, to be clear, you're moving the original operating budget. And I will, do you want me to reread the original operating budget, or is the... No. Okay. It's your meeting. All right, that's what I like to hear. Second, I have to say, this is one of the more productive discussions we have had about the budget in over 10 years. Normally, it goes by in about 4 minutes. So I appreciate everyone's input in the discussion. It's been very, I think, fruitful. A number of people have, I think, they learned things about the budget that we did not know were presented. So, Article 4, all those in favor, please raise your ballots. Opposed? Article 4 passes. I will make a motion to, I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 4 on the second section ballot as read. Is there a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 4? Mr. Gray, seconded by Betsy. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration on Article 4, raise your ballots. Anyone opposed to restricting reconsideration on Article 4? The motion carries. One nay. Two. Majority carries. Moving on, Article 5. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $290,000 for the highway and road reconstruction purposes. Said amount is partially offset by revenues from the highway block grant, estimated to be $134,000. This appropriation will be a non-lapsing appropriation pursuant to RSA 32:7 BI and will not lapse until completed or by December 31st, 2019. Majority vote required. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 7-1. Motion made to open Article 5 for discussion by
with Article 5.
Ryan, second by Tom Gray. I'll recognize Ryan Tebow to speak to the article. Oh, yeah, we got to vote. All those in favor of opening the discussion? Thank you. Opposed? Thank you. We are open. We are recognized for our
So money annually received for the highway block grant is estimated to be at $134,000. This money offsets $690,000 raised for the program. Estimated tax impact of this is 70 cents per thousand. So homes worth $200,000 would pay $140 per year for road construction. There is no effect on the tax rate because this article is put on every year. It's the same amount of money, so it's actually going to go up or won't go down. It stays the same.
Anyone wants you to speak to Article 5? Seeing no one?
So, like a super hard question. Does this also, like I know it's not stated, will this also help to fix the pothole in the driveway for the school?
If the pothole's on the school's property, it's the school's responsibility under their budget. Oh, that's a fair question. I don't know what time it is. Fair question.
Says estimated tax impact 70 cents a thousand, and then the last line it says there's no effect on the tax rate.
Correct.
That confuses me.
Right, so the cost is 70 cents per thousand, but you're not going to see a difference from last year's tax rate to this year because it's the same amount of money we asked for last year. So you're not seeing an increase or a decrease. That's why it's saying there's no effect.
Good question, Les. Further questions, comments? Make a motion to close Article 5 for further discussion. Mr. Gray, second by Mrs. Brown. All those in favor of closing discussion? Suzanne. You did probably read the balance. Anyone opposed? Not seeing you, you've closed Article 5 to discussion. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 5 on the second session ballot as read. Is there a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 5? Mr. Gray, seconded by Les Elder. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 5? Opposed? You have closed consideration. You have approved the motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 5. Article 6, to see if the town will vote to authorize the selectmen to enter into a 10-year lease purchase agreement for the sum of $505,000 for the purpose of leasing a pumper tanker to replace the 1989 pumper for the fire department, as described in the recommended 2018 to 2023 capital improvement program. The first year's payment will commence in 2019, which is the expiration of the lease for the 2013 pumper, and is estimated to be approximately $61,000. This lease agreement contains an escape clause, majority vote required. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 8-1. Motion made to open Article 6 for discussion by Mr. Gray, seconded by Aaron. Thank you. It's going to be a long day. Aaron's on the budget. All those in favor, raise your ballots. Opposed? We are now discussing Article 6. The moderator will recognize Selectman Tim Walsh.
This is going to replace a 1989 pumper. I know that's really new, but it's going to replace a 30-year-old piece of equipment with an 800-gallon water capacity, a modern EFPA compliant pumper tanker combination unit. with a 2,000 gallon water capacity. The estimated tax impact starting in year 2019 is 5 cents per thousand. The funding will come from a 10-year lease purchase agreement with no funds raised until 2019. Questions on the report? Good. Read.
Nobody has any specific questions. I'll just summarize real quick. 2009, we took a truck out of service. We had 4 bumpers. There was safety issues and space constraints at the station. Prior to that, we had about 5,000 gallons of water on wheels available to respond to fires. Currently, we have 2,800 gallons. As the trucks got replaced over the years, they got replaced with pumpers that fit in the old station. A lot of the older tankers that we had 1,500 gallons of water on each. Because of the space constraints of the new station, we only had 1,000 gallon capacity that would fit in that station. Now that we have the new station, we can design the truck that's correct for the town and meets our rural water supply needs. That's the reason for the tanker. The reason we're doing it this year, despite assessment concerns and that type of stuff, is the payment for the current truck expires, and to keep the payment the same, level funded, with the exception of the increase in inflation and the cost, it's a $20,000 increase as opposed to not continuing the lease with the new truck. It would get bought for a couple of years and then inevitably we would have to do it, there'd be another spike. So that's the reason it's on the ballot this year. Like I said, it's the truck that's designed for the town, it's what we need. And I entertain any questions or concerns about it.
This new tank truck is significantly larger by volume for water than the ones we have.
Correct.
Is this going to allow for removal of one of the existing? Is this a complete replacement? You said we were at 4 down to 3.
Yeah. So basically, the 1989 truck, which is currently stationed in Milton Mills, will be taken from service. That was purchased used in 2003. It was an emergent replacement. The truck was unable to be repaired. It was used if we bought what we could with the money. It wasn't necessarily the right truck for the town, but it got us by for the last 15 years. And question again? Sorry.
How many water tanks do we currently have?
So we're gonna remain with 3. So we're not going back up to 4, but we're getting closer to the water capacity.
Okay, and I guess my question is, do we need 3 or can we do 2 larger ones, for example, versus?
Yes, I got you. So I would recommend keeping 3. Here's the reason. There needs to be a truck stationed at Milton Mills. Obviously, there's a station up there. Everybody's insurance rating is dependent on that station being there because of the distance from the other station. I would not recommend running with less than 1 fire truck from Central Station. Currently, the guys left to go to Rochester for station coverage. If there was only 1 truck there, there'd be nothing protecting the town mill.
Okay, which makes sense.
Or any other back-to-back call. And additionally, the way we operate, the first truck will respond and attack the fire. The second truck needs to respond and establish water supply.
Okay, it was just to make sure that we couldn't like sell off one of the old ones. Perfect.
Going along with the previous question, I'm going along. Also, can you remember approximately how many times a year for the last few years this 1989 truck has been used?
The 1980 truck has been what
The
used?
one that you want to like how often has it been used?
Off the top of my head, not a lot, because it's stationed up in Milton Mills, but the 2005 pumper will go to Milton Mills, so this truck will actually end up being used a lot more frequently than the one that it's replacing. It's gonna be a primary response piece as opposed to a truck in out at the station.
So it'll be called from Milton Mills more often for primary use?
No, it's going to be stationed in Milton at Station 1. The older truck will go up to Milton Mills because it's used less frequency. So we put the oldest truck up there, basically extend the life of it. And,
simply because you need to have something in there?
And we need to have something.
Okay.
And it doesn't make sense to put the most expensive, newest truck at that station because of the call volume. It's not out there.
I'm wondering if the size of the new truck has any implications for access on our poorer roads in town, and if it would require reconstruction of smaller roads in town to handle the larger truck.
So one of the things we did when we designed this truck is we took that into consideration. It's 37 feet long, maybe less than 38 feet. If we went to a larger capacity, say a 3,000 gallon tanker, there would be a lot more weight in it, obviously. The height would be taller, the length would be bigger, and then we would have those concerns. But because we kept it as small as we possibly could, it's roughly 4 feet bigger than the current pumpers. But as you know, that was never practical at the old station because we had 6 inches in the front and back. And no extra height to put the water capacity. So we took that all into consideration, and I don't think that would be a concern.
Doug?
Do you have any capital reserve funds that you can use to pay this down?
There is 2 capital reserve funds that could be used for this. One has $893 in it, and the other one has approximately $30,000 in it. However, that was earmarked for anticipation of a grant for the ladder truck that we're applying for. So I'm trying to keep that. It's a 5% match, which is about the amount of money in that capital reserve. And if anything else were to come up where we need to replace something else, I don't really want to have both of them at 0.
The interest rate on these loans is really favorable. I'm wondering, do you have any estimates? Yes, if you were an economist, perhaps you would, as to how much that interest rate would go up if we delayed purchase of this vehicle.
Interest rates, I'm not obviously an economist, but I know when I got this quote in December, there was concern of them going up. The other thing that will definitely go up is the cost of the vehicle. So 35% is industry standard, and that equates to $15,000 to $20,000+. So that alone, the longer we push it off. Again, is the reason I think this is the most appropriate year to put it on the ballot. We make that last payment of the 2013 truck this year. The new truck will not be in Milton until early 2019, and that first payment will not be due until the following year. That's why we could get the truck ordered, but not make the payment, the way the lease agreements work out. I looked at doing a 7-year lease as well, but that increased the payment a little bit more. I thought the $20,000 increase was the way to do it. And 10 years from now, it'll be about the time that the 2005 truck needs to be replaced. So
you do get a rate lock on this interest rate.
that'll be close. There's no guarantee because obviously we don't have an agreement. There's nothing been passed at town meeting. That's the reason for the word approximate written in the warrant article to adjust for any deviation in the interest rate between now and the time we enter into an agreement.
Doug?
Did I hear you right, you're thinking of getting a ladder truck down the road?
That was presented to the planning board in the CIP, and they did not vote in favor of it because, to be honest, I had too many different variables out there. Whether we were going to eventually purchase a new one, I don't think that's the best decision based on the cost benefit. It's not used as frequently as a pumper or a tanker, and it costs a lot more money. Do we need a ladder truck in this town? Yes, I firmly believe that we do. We currently have it. It's older than the truck we're replacing. It's a 1985. But we're going to maintain it as long as we can. We're going to continue to apply for grants for it, and eventually I'm going to try to get some money set aside in capital reserve to find another used vehicle that will get us through. long-term.
Brian, the gentleman behind you first.
Fred Cameron, just a quick question. Is this part of the capital improvement plan that's in place?
It is, yes. It's recommended by the planning board in the CIP.
Thank you.
Just a couple comments. Both my father and mother were firefighters, volunteer firefighters. I grew up in a no-traffic light, tiny rural town. All of the equipment and even all the trucks were paid for voluntary efforts. I haven't seen a lot of firefighter-sponsored donation, volunteer kind of events. I'd like to see a little bit more of that. I'd definitely be willing to help with that as well, just anything to lessen the tax load.
Next Saturday at 8 a.m. we have a pancake breakfast, which donations will gladly be accepted. So we'll see you there. If you want some pancakes, then you guys will be there. That's next Saturday at 8 a.m.
How many people?
Honestly, we've been in the station for a year. We've never had a facility to do it in the past, so this is something new to us.
Holding it in the facility itself.
In the facility. It'll be in the base. Every year we do an annual fundraiser with the campground and the tractor pulls. That doesn't bring a lot of money in, obviously. It's a lot of work. And the priorities for the volunteer or the on-call firefighters needs to be training and responding to calls more so than any extra stipulations put on them for fundraising and that type of stuff. It's kind of a thing of the past, and the equipment has basically become out of reach of fundraising in a town like this or any other town. It's a good idea, but it's a definite challenge. Hello.
I've only here a few years, so there's a lot still that I'm learning about the town. And I understand that the capacity requires are less, there's no mills, and you are moving the truck from that area.
So
I
we're...
apologize for being redundant.
No. Clarity is important. So the truck that's up there is the one that's being replaced. It has an 800-gallon capacity, which was, again, the truck came from Long Island, New York. It was a truck that was available that we could afford at the time that got us through a hump. The truck that's going up there is currently in Milton at Central Station. That has a 1,000-gallon capacity. So there will be a newer truck with more water up there. And then Central Station, instead of having 2,000 between two trucks, it will have 3,000 between two trucks.
And I understand that it's in 2019 that the payments are not made, so there's a 5% increase in the tax rate next year.
5 cents.
5 cents.
Yep.
Sorry, not 5 cents. Is that anticipated to continue with the 5 cents because you say first payment?
Yep.
First payment in more?
So the payment for the 2013 is built into your taxes. We've been making that payment for 7 years. It'll jump up 5 cents, and then that'll continue that same amount of money for the next 10 years.
5 cents.
It's actually 15 cents total. So currently, 10 cents basically is what we're paying for the truck that we got 7 years ago. You'll add the 5 cents, and then the 15 cents will continue for the next 10 years, the length of the term.
But to make sure it's not compounding, it's the same amount over the next 5 years. It's not a tax increase
Then, anything else? Just one more point. I got preliminary numbers to present to the CIP for $530,000. When we designed the truck, the original price came in at $550,000, and obviously that was more money. And we made a few adjustments to get it down to the $505,000. So we're not asking for the world. We're asking for the truck that's going to do what we need it to do. The difference is the motor and the cab, essentially. We originally were hoping for a larger horsepower, greater torque to help with the hills. But after talking to the dealer, it was determined that the smaller motor with the less expensive cap would do the job. We just might make Plymouth Ridge at 45 instead of 55. So that's not worth $50,000. Anything else?
Is this your problem? All right. Further questions, comments with respect to Article 6? Not seeing any, I'll entertain a motion to close Article 6 for discussion by Mr. Gray, seconded by Ms. Cameron. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your ballots. Opposed? Any discussion on Article 6? I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 6 on the second session ballot as read. Is there a motion to restrict reconsideration of this particular article? Michael Torrey, yes. Seconded by Maureen Steer. All those in favor? Opposed? If you're opposed, you're limited your ability to reconsider Article 6. Article 7. Fire Department Equipment and Apparatus Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $65,000 to be added to the Milton Fire Department Equipment and Apparatus Capital Reserve Fund previously established for the purpose of funding future capital expenditures as described in the recommended 2018-2023 capital improvements program. The sum is to come from the fund balance and no amount is to be raised from taxation. Majority vote required is recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 8-0. Motion made to open Article 7 to discussion by Maureen Steer, seconded by Tom Gray. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your ballots. All those opposed? We are open for discussion. It sounds like I'm reading after an ad very quickly, as I am. Les.
I have a question. It reads, this sum to come from the fund balance and no amount to be raised from taxation. Am I correct that the fund balance is made up of taxation money from previous years? That statement is untrue. The fund balance does contain taxation.
Good point, Boss.
If the word current was just put in front of the word tax rate at the end, it would be a
valid point. Somewhat. The point is there is no tax impact this year.
On the current rate, but that's not what it says.
To start now and start raising.
The last sentence is incorrect in the way it's worded. The last sentence says there is no effect on the current tax rate, then that statement would be 100% correct.
I think our young guy right here hit it right on the head, to be raised, meaning no new money to be raised. And that wording came directly from the DRA, so that was not made up or created here in town. That's an example warrant article from people that approved the warrant articles. I understand the point, plus, but
that's the sad part. Sometimes we put together what we think is good English. The DRA is saying it all has to pass enough to the Department of Administration. Further questions, comments? Motion is made by Ryan to move the question. Seconded by Mr. Brown. All those in favor of closing further discussion on Article 7, please raise your ballots. Opposed? I'll instruct the clerk to place Article 7 on the second session ballot as read. Is there a motion? I'm going to do something to tighten this up. I'm going to take the motion to reconsideration after every 2 or 3, so we don't, this something getting really tight on that flag waving. Article 8, Highway Department Special Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. So it's still open, but I'm not sure how many means. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,000 to be added to the highway department special equipment capital reserve fund previously established for the purposes of funding future capital expenditures as described in the recommended 2018 to 2023 capital improvements plan. Some to come from the fund balance and no amount to be raised from taxation. Majority vote required. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 8-0. Motion made to open Article 8 for discussion by Tom Gray, seconded by Maureen Spear. All those in favor of the motion open to discussion, please raise your ballots. Anyone opposed? We are discussing Article 8. The moderator recognizes Mr. Ryan.
For future purchases of DPW equipment in accordance with the 2018 to 2023 capital improvement plan. The current capital reserve fund balance is $47. The estimated tax impact, the funding will come from the unreserved fund balance in 2018, so there's no effect on this year's tax rate.
Questions, comments, concerns? Doug?
Oh, no.
Catherine?
Yes.
I'll tell you one time we went to church and we just classes like that, everybody stood up. Okay, further discussion on Article 8. Not seeing any, the moderator will entertain a motion to close Article 8 for discussion by Tom Gray, second by Mr. Cameron. All those in favor of closing discussion on Article 8, please raise your ballots. Anyone opposed? Thank you. The motion passes. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 8 on the second session ballot as read or amended. I'd like to entertain a motion to restrict reconsideration of Articles 7 and 8 at this time. Tom Gray, seconded by Mr. Paul Steele. All those in favor of restricting reconsiderations on 7 and 8? Anyone opposed? You have restricted reconsideration on 7 and 8. Article 9, Highway Department Vehicle Capital Reserve Fund. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of, what did you say? Don't tell anybody you can't go anywhere?
Right.
Don't go anywhere. That help? Oh, I checked outside, they're gonna be having chili and some other hot items for lunch. Mac and cheese, soup. They're gonna bring them down, when they close to 12 down to this area so you can support that fundraising effort outside. Answer that question. Article 9, see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be added to the Highway Department Vehicle Capital Reserve Fund previously established for the purpose of funding future capital expenditures as described in the recommended 2018-2023 capital improvement program. The sum is to come from the fund balance, no amount to be raised from taxation. Majority vote required. Recommended Board of Selectmen reserve regular budget committee. Wow. Motion made to open Article 9 discussion by Mr. Graves. Second by Maureen Steer. All those in favor? Raise your ballots. Opposed? We are opening Article 9 for discussion. The moderator will recognize Selectman Zimwalt.
For future purchase of the deposited truck, a pickup truck with snowplow, with the CIP processing 2018, 2023. The current balance is $7,500, estimated tax impact. Funding will come from unreserved funding balance 2018. There will be no effect on this year's tax rate.
Questions, comments, concerns on Article 9? Mr. Brown.
I happen to have been on the planning board, and the planning board was gifted being the official committee for the CIP. The reason I wanted to speak to this one, it is the clearest way you can see how the decision to fund big ticket items, that is over $20,000, with a useful service life of more than 3 years, that our capital projects, big stuff, can be funded with the least amount of pain and even out the tax load for the community. And this, they're starting out at, I think, 7,500, moving up to 50,000. It's incremental. And those of you who are not too squeamish may remember the story of just raising the temperature on the frog. The frog never feels uncomfortable. And that's a good definition. It's a lovely plan. Anything that is here that has the approval and recommendation from the planning board, the approval of the budget committee, and the approval of the selectmen to use the CIP process is just an excellent way to protect taxpayer expenses.
Further questions, comments, considerations, argument? Not seeing any. The moderator is going to recognize the article. Motion to close Article 9 for further discussion. Mr. Gray, seconded by Mr. Cameron. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Not seeing any, we have closed. Reconsider further discussion on Article 9. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 9 on the second session ballot as read. Article 10, establish municipal buildings capital reserve fund. See if the town will vote to establish a capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35:1 for purposes of designing, constructing, and maintaining municipal buildings and to raise an appropriate sum $50,000 to be placed for funding purposes of funding future capital expenditures as described in the recommended 2018-2022 capital improvements program. The sum is determined from the fund balance and all amounts to be raised in taxation. Further, to name the selectmen as agents for extension of this fund, majority vote required, recommended by the board of selectmen 3-0, recommended by the budget committee 8-0. Is there a motion to be made to open Article 10 for discussion by Mr. Gray, second by Mr. Cameron? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your ballots. You are opposed. We have open Article 10 for discussion. The chair, the moderator recognizes Selectman Ross. Andy?
Thank you again, Chris. So really, this is a new established municipal building capital reserve fund. We don't have this as of right now. The school does have one. It works very well. So really, what this building capital reserve fund will do will help us move forward with fixing some of our current buildings that we have in town, such as Town Hall. Really needs a new furnace, unfortunately a roof, foundation. I could go on and on. So really, what this is going to do is it's good budgeting, it's good planning, and it will, like Larry said, it will help any spike in our tax rate through the CIP. So this is really a good article, and I'm really in favor of it. So thank you.
I have been presented with a amendment to Article 10. Motion's been made by Michelle Boucham to include the words municipal buildings. Says the article reads, vote to establish a municipal buildings capital reserve fund. This has been seconded by Pat Smith. Well, I don't know what to do with this one. It's on the floor for the amendment. Questions, comments, discussions with respect to this first amendment for Article 10. Les.
I have a question. Is it just for buildings, structures, or does it include ball fields, lawn maintenance? Or it's just for physical structure and maintenance?
Yes.
Second question. I presume that the $50,000 has been, or the money that had been previously spent was in the government buildings fund. Wow.
Yes.
Was that budget reduced?
No.
So this is in addition to what previous years government buildings had, and they're going to maintain that line?
What this capital, Pat Smith, what this capital reserve fund is for bigger projects that we can't budget for $50,000 roof, for a $100,000 foundation. bigger projects. The budget, the government buildings budget is only a $20,000 line to maintain all of the buildings in town, which would be light bulbs and toilets and anything, doorknobs, anything that breaks. So this is to step up to take care of and provide protection for the infrastructure of the buildings in town.
Further questions, comments with respect to Amendment 1? On the amendment. You, as long as they're generic, go ahead. We're going to get through this.
Real quick, I have no skin in the game we have a new fire station. However, hopefully this town has learned that we should plan for future capital expenditures. And I hope that no other department head ever has to go through what we went through with the fire station for the last 10 years. So, that's a good thing.
My name is John Chowick. And in line with this warrant article, I'd like to mention, answer some of these questions, that the $5,000 warrant article that we have for the capital improvements and routine maintenance has been taken off for $5,000. This will take care of that also. And as we all know, our historical buildings must be maintained in the future. Thank you.
Questions, comments, considerations? Not seeing any, I'm going to call for a vote on Amendment 1 to Article 10, which is to include the words municipal buildings in front of capital reserve fund. For purposes of expedience, I'm going to violate my own rules and not read the whole thing. Unless someone strenuously jumps up and down, throw me out. Okay, not seeing anyone doing that. All those in favor of Amendment 1 to add the word municipal building in front of capital reserve fund for Article 10, raise your ballots. Anyone opposed? You have added the words municipal buildings in front of capital reserve fund. Back to Article 10 as rewritten. Any further questions, comments, considerations? Not seeing any, I'll entertain a motion to close Article 10 for discussion made by Mr. Brown, seconded by Mr. Gray. All those in favor of closing further discussion to Article 10, raise your ballots. And opposed? You have closed discussion. I will instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 10 on the second session ballot as it has been amended. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to restrict further reconsideration of Articles 9 and 10. Mr. Gray, seconded by Virginia Long. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration on Articles 9 and 10, please raise your ballots. Opposed? You have restricted reconsideration on those articles. Moving on to Article 11. Milton Free Public Library Capital Reserve Fund. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of $31,000 to be placed in the Milton Free Public Library Capital Reserve Fund, previously established for the purposes of funding future capital expenditures as described in the recommended 2018 to 2023 CIP program. This sum is to come from the fund balance, no amount to be raised from taxation. Majority vote required, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 8-0. Motion made to open Article 11 for discussion by Mr. Cameron, seconded by Mr. Gray. All those in favor of discussing Article 11, please raise your ballots. And all those opposed, you are discussing Article 11. The moderator will recognize Selectman Ryan P.
This money will be used to continue the restoration of the Milton Free Public Library. The current capital reserve fund balance is $25,000. Estimated tax impact, funding will come from the unreserved fund balance in 2019, so there will be no effect on the tax rate this year.
Questions, comments, considerations? Sir. I got to raise your hand and use the mic.
Is this going to be for the library connected to school or for? Milton. All right.
Good question.
Thank you. You just saw me put a different hat on, as I happen to be one of the library trustees. And the access to information, the access to books, the access to media, the access to a library where you are alone with your own mind and the world is an incredible privilege. Beyond that, Pat Smith has been an incredible privilege, and the LCHIP program has been an incredible privilege. We have been able, with Pat's guidance and help from John Padwick, help from other volunteers, to buy dollar bills for about 50 cents a piece to support and maintain that 1875 Second Empire school building, which was sold by the school district to the town for $1 in 1992. It is a treasure. It is a heartbeat of the community, and I cannot appreciate more the access to information that libraries give. Thank you.
Russ. I'm a little confused because there were two, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, there were two capital reserve funds for the Milton Free Public Library. I believe we voted to eliminate one of them so that they would go into the new one. And it appears to me that the one you're referencing, the Milton Free Public Library, is the 2005 one, which was supposed to be eliminated. The new one, dated 2014, is Milton Free Public Library Repair and Maintenance. So I'm a little confused to which capital reserve fund. And can we put into a fund that we voted to eliminate?
That's it. Later.
In 2005, the Milton Free Public Library did indeed set a capital reserve fund, and that is the one that we currently use. In 2014, the select board also came up with a capital reserve fund for the purposes of building restoration. And we decided that that fund was redundant, and that was the one that was eliminated. So we are putting money in the correct fund.
Okay. Further questions, comments, considerations with respect to Article 11? Not seeing any, I'm going to entertain a motion to close Article 11 for discussion by Mr. Gray, seconded by Paul Steer. All those in favor of closing further discussion article, or closing discussion on Article 11, please raise your hands. Anyone opposed? We have closed discussion on Article 11. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 11 on the second session ballot as read. Moving on, Article 12, to see if the town of Milton Technology, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $8,000 to be placed in the town of Milton Technology Fund, previously established for the purpose of funding future capital expenditures as described in the recommended 2018-2023 capital improvements program. This sum is to come from fund balance. No amounts to be raised from taxation. Majority vote required. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 8-0. Motion made to open Article 12 for discussion by Tom Gray, seconded by Mr. Cameron. All those in favor of the motion to open discussion, please raise your ballots. Anyone opposed to further discussing? Not seeing any. Take it Pat's, who is just scratching his head. That's the auctioneer in there, you know. So you scratch your head. Call this to a vote for discussion, Article 12. The moderator will recognize Selectman Tim Moore.
This money is to be used by computer software, hardware, and other technological items used in municipal government. Basically, I think we're going from the 19th century to the 21st century, I hope. The current balance is $6,000. Estimated tax impact, funding will come from an unused fund balance in 2018. There's no effect in moving the tax rate.
Questions, comments? Sorry.
Quick one, am I correct? I thought I saw.
Name again for the record.
David Carpenter.
You should look at me and I know to ask you.
Did I miss, is one of the warrant articles, wasn't there something about upgrading the GIS software? Is there a reason that those are actually completely kept separate versus just, since this is computer hardware and software, that they're not in the same fund? To have that be combined into one, to not have to keep maintaining two of them? Or what's opposite to that?
It's your meeting.
Yeah, Bruce Woodruff again. The GIS capital reserve fund that is, I think, the next warrant article is really needed to be separate from this one, mainly because in the first year, we're theoretically, if we approve it, we're purchasing the GIS software, which is public web-based software that everybody from home can use, and staff can use. Sorry, losing my voice. The bottom line here is that to have a geographic information system that's worth its salt, you really have to build it over the years, and that it's much like smoothing out the cost of the system over the years to make it so you don't have spikes in tax rate. So, what we're envisioning is a 5-year program. You get the software first in the first year. You get the base maps, and you get the parcel data. You get all of the information that's on the assessor's cards. You can do all kinds of things at home with this GIS system. But then, in each succeeding year, in about the same amount of money, you will continue to put into this capital reserve fund to make new layers of information, new attribute data that everyone can use, floodplain, wetlands, you name it. You can see where that is as it relates to your property. And there's all kinds of attribute data that's attached to the mapping, so it's smart maps. So that's the reason why you need both.
Lynette.
I just want to say I agree with you. I think that's a great idea. From my experience with technology, it's not always trustworthy. A lot of the time, it'll break down. You have to places two separate accounts, one for maintaining the technology programming use, and one for this web page. The web page account is just for the web page. The other one will be for anything that breaks down and what we need to replace it, correct? That's why I agree.
Lynette? And then I have an amendment to read.
I disagree because software is software, hardware is hardware, it all should be lumped together. That way you get a total of what we're spending each year. By separating it like this, you're saying that it's something special. It's special in its uniqueness and what it's supposed to do. But it's still maintenance contracts, it's still hardware that you have to upgrade every year, the same as you do in your local offices. And you should see it all at once, not separately.
I have an amendment on the floor that I have to read at this time. So the amendment to the article would add the words upgrades, capital reserve. It's proposed by Michelle Bouchon. It's seconded by Karen Brown. And I'll just read it, the first part for clarity. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $8,000 to be placed in the Town of Milton Technology Upgrades Capital Reserve Fund.
Because that's the name.
Because that's the name it was previously given us. So At this point in time, I have the motion on the floor. Would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I would like to answer the question that was brought up.
Let's get past the motion first, and then you can ask, because it's a clarification point. So, there's a motion on the floor to add the words upgrades capital reserve fund. Anyone want to discuss the amendment on the floor? Not seeing any, I'll entertain a motion to approve the amendment, to vote for the amendment on the floor, and to approve. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay, you have amended Article 12 to read upgrades to capital reserve. I will now recognize Ms. Woodruff to speak to the amendment as a whole.
This is just to clarify what I said before. This particular capital reserve fund is to be used for computers, software, hardware, and other technological items. When you're building a GIS system, you are contracting services to collect GIS data for mapping and data layers. It's not the same animal.
Actually, it is. I did an analysis on the software, and it is software. It has applications within applications, and it's wonderful. I absolutely love it. I totally support it in itself. But as a budget, I still believe that they should all be combined together so that we need to know each year just how much we're spending on this, whether it's for the town or for other departments.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes.
Would you need to provide repair and services to the system? Would you constantly need to do something to fix it or put money in to make sure it's working? Or is it literally just we pay you to provide the service?
I don't quite understand the question.
So if we were to have both accounts, the system and then...
They're really two different accounts. One is to repair what we have in the town hall, the technology line, and to move forward, like Tim said, out of the 19th centuries. And the other one is GSI. Is a whole different, it's a whole different, like Bruce mentioned, a whole different animal.
It's a service, where it's like a service.
Yeah.
We're asking for a service.
And it's something that we're going to be reading, so it shouldn't answer any questions.
So.
Okay, just clarify, for example, currently, one of the things that is available that we're not utilizing, and I'm not saying we should be utilizing, is, for example, Google has Google Docs for municipalities. We could pretty much remove you having to pay for upgrades to Microsoft Word, Excel, and all the rest of the stuff that have Office 365. Effectively, a mail client, it's all built in, and it's a web-based system, and it's a service that you pay on an annual basis. You're not paying for upgrades, but instead you're paying for it every year, a smaller amount. Instead of every 5 years, you have to pay several $1,000s to upgrade everybody's software, for example, because there's a newer version of Word. To his point, as an example, the GIS software. Is it a dollar item that we're going to have to pay every year for them to maintain the website? So it's a website. They're not going to, it's not a one-time fee where we have to pay for it once, and then if we don't upgrade it from that point on, we still get to keep using it without having to pay money. There's still going to be a cost and expenditure related to that service. So it's more of a service than it is a capital investment if we're going to have to continue to pay for it every single year. I guess that's the difference between a capital investment. Is like if we stop paying for it, we still get to keep what we bought. In this case, if we stop paying for that service, do we suddenly lose access to the GIS information? Is it on our computers or is it on somebody else's computers? I think that's where he was going with it from a perspective of, and in that regard, it's software. It's not special any more than Google Docs is special. It's And just like the Google system, you can pay a little bit more for more advanced capabilities, which is what this GIS is going to be. Each year, we're going to pay, give them a little bit more and add more capabilities. That's why it makes, to me, makes sense for it to all be one thing, is because it is the same thing. It's just on somebody else's computer versus ours, but effectively, it's still software.
Just for point of clarification, I would tend to agree with keeping them separate, and I'll tell you why is, where I work, I just got a grant to basically take my GIS system to the next level, where I, if you call me and tell me you need a tree removed, I create a work order, it tracks all that. It is totally separate from the town's IT technology, because if the IT department where I work got their hands on it, they'd mess it up. So, but for the purposes of when I applied for a grant and got a grant to take my GIS system to the next level, it made sense that it was its own separate account, its own separate article, its own separate thing, because it just made it much cleaner than applying for the grant. I agree with Lynette that it's all technology, but to the people providing the services on the outside, the vendors and those paying for it, it's not. So.
I just wanted to be as a good neighbor.
Yeah, I do want to keep her as a good neighbor.
And that statement right there actually makes it even more clear as to why, okay, I kind of tend to now agree with him.
It has to be. You're building, one you already have and you're trying to maintain, the other one you're trying to build, you don't have it yet. He's in the building process in the next 5 years and beyond, because it continues to evolve. All right. Virginia.
I have a question about this warrant or this article, but on a different topic. I would like to hear from the select board or maybe budget committee about the rationale in using this for this article and some of the previous ones that it's coming from the fund balance rather than from taxation. Are you looking forward to how much we're going to need to replace the fund balance in future years? I mean, eventually there will have to be taxation if we need to replace it. And does it really make sense to use I mean, I understand there's been a lot of concern about taxes this year, and yes, it's really great if we don't have to add any taxes. But I also don't want to run up the fund balance. So I just want to hear from you about that, because every single one has been from the fund balance.
Well, the way that the capital improvement plan, one of the ways that it works is, taking money from the fund balance to support these warrant articles. Fortunately, we're in good shape with the fund balance, and moving forward, since I became selectman, the fund balance has gotten nothing but better. Not because of me, but because of all the hard work from the budget committee and our department heads, working very hard to keep the budgets where they are. So your question is, that's the way that the program works, is to extend it from the fund balance, that the capital improvement plans. And, if we came to a point where the fund balance seemed like it was in trouble, then we would have to maybe take a different avenue. But as of right now, we're doing fine in Virginia.
How is the fund balance getting replenished this year?
Well, there's a few different ways that the fund balance gets replenished. And one of the ways is through unexpended funds that the town didn't use from prior years, or from the prior year. So that's one way that the fund balance gets replenished. Another way is through Michelle's office, through registration and so forth. So we're in good shape with the fund balance. I know it's there for other reasons, but this is the way the capital improvement plan is supposed to work. So.
Mr. Graham. Doug, you want to comment? Mr. Graham, you want the mic?
No, just want to move the question.
You want to move the question? I'll recognize Mr. Shute, and then I'll recognize to move the question.
Andy is correct, and so is Michelle, but also the school gives back money each year that they do not spend out of their operating budget. And also this year, you're going to get some from your SAU separation, too, which is going to be more than we gave back this year from the school. So that's how you replenish that fund.
You're exactly right, Doug, and I apologize for not including the school's funds that they give back every year. So that's a big help.
There's a motion on the floor to move the question. All those in favor of closing Article 12 for further discussion? Made by Mr. Graham, seconded by Mr. Smith. All those in favor, raise your ballots. Opposed? We close discussion on Article 12. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 12 on the second session ballot as amended with the new wording. At this time, I'll take a motion to restrict further reconsiderations of Articles 12 and 11 by Mr. Brown, seconded by Mr. Graham. All those in favor of wanting to restrict further reconsideration of 11 and 12? Anyone else opposed? Not seeing any, we close Articles 12 and 13, 11 and 12 for further reconsideration. Moving on to Article 13. To see if the town will vote, and let me caution you, we're entering the witching hour. We have 1 hour till we're going to open up the school district meeting, and we have 7 articles to go. So the point's been made. Please don't stand up to say that you agree with the point that we made. Because Article 13, Geographic Information Systems. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $8,000 for the purpose of establishing a public web-based geographic information system for the town as described as recommended 2018-23. CIP, the sum is to come from the fund balance, no amount to be raised from taxation. Majority vote required, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 8-0. Motion made to open Article 13 for discussion by Mr. Gray, seconded by Mr. Cameron. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your ballots. We are now discussing Article 13. The moderator recognizes any process. Thank you for your argument.
So we've really already spoken about the GSI system. It's to be used to create a public web-based GSI system from the town to aid in future planning in land use data retention and retrieval. So more or less, we're going to take maps from off of rocks that we have down at the town hall. We're going to put them even on the computer so everybody can see them at their house. That being said, if you really have any other questions, Bruce, town planner, would be able to answer any questions.
I just want to be brief if I can keep my voice. The most important thing about this system is that it's usable by the public and staff. And secondly, map layers that can be put together show you your property, your structures on your property. And then it can also show you things like if you're in a floodplain, if you have wetlands. It can show you where the butters are if you're going to do a land use application. It can show you where the utilities are in the street out front. It can be used by the DPW director, it can be used by the assessor, and the uses go on and on. And it would take me a long time to explain them all. The last thing is that when you show those things, like the water lines under the ground and the sewer lines, you can have attribute data that's attached to those line segments or points, so that when you click on it, you learn about that, and the department heads can add data as time goes by.
So it's an incredible tool. I recommend it for
I'm using mine to prioritize water and sewer line, aged infrastructure, so as to better plan, so that I don't have to replace it all at the same time. So it's been a real asset for me to look at everything that we have to manage, and these department heads will find the same thing. It'll road improvement planning, paving plan, any drainage structures or that Mike has to maintain and repair. All those things will help. It's another tool to hopefully allow the government to manage better and lower any spikes in the tax impact. But very good. Lynette.
I didn't know if you would like to talk about this or not, and that is at the cemetery. They could also include this for the cemetery, so we're all using the same type of software and stuff. It's a great piece of software. I've worked with it, played with it. You're right, it's actually.
She's right. That's another asset that the town does have to manage, the cemetery. Burt. Further questions, comments, consideration? Not seeing any, I'll entertain a motion to close Article 13 for discussion by Mr. Gray, second by Mr. Cameron. All those in favor, please raise your ballots. We have closed discussion of Article 13 at all. Anyone opposed? Now we've closed discussion. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 13 on the second section ballot as read. Article 14, establishing a bridge capital reserve fund, and I do have a possible amendment. I do have an amendment that I can give for this one. To see if the town will vote to establish a capital reserve fund under provisions of RSA 35:1 for the purposes of repairing, reconstructing, or constructing bridges or culverts in the town of Milton to raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 to be placed in this fund for the purpose of funding future capital expenditures as described in the recommended 2018 to 2023 CIP. The sum is to come from the fund balance and no amount is to be raised with taxation. Further, the name of the selectmen as agents to expend from this fund. Majority vote required. Recommended by the board of selectmen 3-0. Recommended by the budget committee 7-1. Motion made to open Article 14 discussion by Mr. Gray, seconded by Mr. Cameron. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your ballots. Anyone opposed? We are now discussing Article 14. The moderator recognizes Mr. Ryan Tebow.
This is to be used for future replacement of Milton bridges, including the Winding Road Bridge, which has been on the road this state of New Hampshire. The existing capital reserve fund can only be used for border bridges. Estimated tax impact. Funding will come from non-reserved fund balance in 2018. There will be no effect on this year's tax.
Amendment been presented by Michelle Beauchamp to include the word bridge before the words capital reserve fund, the actual wording of the article. Seconded by Nick Marique. So there's an amendment on the floor. Anyone wishing to speak to the amendment? I'll recognize a motion to vote on the amendment. Mr. Grant, seconded by Mr. Brown. All those in favor of amending Article 14 to include the word bridge prior to capital reserve fund, please raise your ballots. Opposed? You have amended the article. Further consideration, discussion to the article.
Quick question. It's not in the warrant article itself, just in the statement. Is that supposed to be order as in B-O-R-D-E-R? Okay.
You mean, well, it's not in the article, it's in the discussion of the explanation.
Just, I was confused. Border, like bridges made out of boards?
We have three Trump size, no. We have three bridges that cross from Maine to New Hampshire, so that's what they meant by state border bridges. They're financed differently. It's a shared function between New Hampshire DOT and Maine DOT. There's different allocations of percentages to various towns.
You should say this about
If you turn around and look at the clock.
This is 5.
Hey, look, it wasn't a teacher this time.
I'll take the credit, but that is my teacher over there.
So, yes, there's a number of borders. In this case, not a resident. All right. Any further discussion with respect to Article 14? Motion?
I have a question. Thank you.
Were you waiting fiercely?
You looked right in my
I looked glazed over.
No, I blend in so nicely, don't I? Okay, so my question is, we have the Highway Road Reconstruction Fund, Article 5, which we fund every year. And this seems to me to be redundant because roads and bridges and culverts and all that goes in highways and roads. So why do we need the second fund? No, we have a separate border, bridges, border, capital reserve fund. So this article doesn't reflect that. Hi.
Okay, the first bridge fund is for the main New Hampshire border bridges. This bridge fund would be for a bridge like on Wyoming Hill Road.
Right, it's still on the road. What about the road? Article 5.
The $290,000, basically what we use that for is to overlay existing paved roads, changing smaller culverts that are in those roads. This fund right here is going to help us when we have to come up with $200,000 or $300,000 to repair a bridge.
So is there some language that restricts the use of this money so you can't dip into this to do Article 5 work?
That question.
Do you mean with respect to the road reconstruction money?
Yes.
Okay,
To keep them separate.
here's the situation. So the road reconstruction money comes in every year from the state. It's part of the gas distribution, redistribution of gas tax. If that came in every year and you didn't have the warrant article, for instance, to spend it on the road reconstruction, that would go to, as unanticipated revenues would go to your undesignated fund balance at the end of the year, and you would get zeroed up to pay. So, because you need to recognize that money every year and get it spent, and your bridges don't get, I won't say it's a big project, it only gets done once every 20 or 50 years, you keep losing that on the gas tax money every year, unless you restructured warrant articles to then take your gas tax and use it for.
Well, I get that, and we fund that highway road reconstruction every year, and the town has been very good about that, and Pat does a great job. But if we're going to fund this, the bridge, not the borders, the bridge and culvert fund, then we need to make sure that, you know, if Pat's running a job and he says, well, I need another $20,000 to finish paving X road, he truly needs to be restricted from touching this until the intent of what he's using the money for is met.
The intent of this article just for bridges or?
Bruce. The reason I believe that we have the culvert in there is I just did a culvert on Townhouse Road that cost $230,000. I did use the road reconstruction money, the $290,000 that we voted in last year, to do that project. So in order to get away from using the $290 to do a project like that, we put the wording into this capital reserve fund, so if that ever comes up again, we can use that fund to do that type of project. I can use the $290,000 that you raise and appropriate every year to put into bridges.
but not reserve.
Well, not reverse, because it's right in there. The name of the capital reserve fund is Bridges Capital Reserve Fund. Doesn't say paved roads capital reserve fund, it's bridges. So I won't be able to take paving out of it, but I can do a box culvert, I'll be able to do a bridge or something to that effect. And I wouldn't go into that for that purpose. To pave a road and say, hey, I shot $20,000. I hope I planned it out a little bit better. Bruce?
I guess I have to clarify, the reason why you have to have a separate bridge capital reserve fund is because you can't use the money that the state gives you in the block grant for match, because all these bridges are funded partially by the state bridge program, which requires a match from the local municipality. The match can't use match for match, is what I'm trying to say. So you really need to have the state ones. That's it.
Bridge funding, when they, for instance, Maine, New Hampshire bridges, 50% DOT, 50% Maine. Now, of that 50%, it's New Hampshire, 20% is the obligation of the town. What he's saying is, DOT won't let you use highway grant tax revenue, gas tax revenue, as the offsetting grant money. You have to raise and appropriate another 20%. Otherwise, they realize that they'd be fully funding bridges, and they're too smart for that. But I gave credit where credit's something. Okay. Further questions with respect to Article 14? Mr. Grant?
Move the question.
You'd like to move the question? Motion's been made by Mr. Graham to close Article 14 for discussion. Second by Mr. Gray. All those in favor of closing discussion Article 14? Opposed? We are closed. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 14 on the second session ballot as it has been amended. I'll accept a motion to restrict reconsideration of Articles 13 and 14 at this time. Mr. Brown, second by Mr. Cameron. All those in favor, raise your ballots. Thank you. Opposed? We have restricted reconsideration on Articles 13 and 14. Article 15, to eradicate European naiad. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,000 for the purposes of eradicating the invasive plant species, the European naiad, from the water bodies in the town of Milton. This is a special warrant article. The sums are from fund balance. No amount is to be raised by taxation. Majority vote required. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 8-0. Motion made to open Article 15 for discussion by seconded by Mr. Brown. All those in favor of opening discussion on Article 15? Anyone opposed? Passed. We now have Article 15 on the floor. The moderator recognizes Selectman Tim Long to speak to the article.
This money is to be used to fight European aid in Milton Three Ponds. The tax impact funding will come from unreserved fund balance in 2018. There'll be no effect on the tax rate. A lot of people live in volunteer an awful lot of time and an awful lot of money for this big enterprise. Grants have been written from the federal government and also from Maine, from New Hampshire, to help eradicate this species. If it is not eradicated, if it continues to grow, there goes the ponds. There goes your tax base.
Questions, comments with respect to Article 15? Not seeing any. I'll take a motion to close Article 15 for discussion. Mr. Brown, second by Mr. Cameron. All those in favor of the motion to close for discussion Article 15? Anyone opposed? You have closed the discussion for Article 15. I'll instruct the clerk to place one Article 15 on the second session ballot as it was read. Article 16, to extend the fire chief term. See if the town will vote to extend the term of office for the position of fire chief from 1 year to a 3-year term. And that Majority vote required, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. Motion made to open Article 16 for discussion by Mr. Gray, second by Mr. Steer. All those in favor of the motion, raise your ballots. Opposed? We are discussing Article 16. The moderator recognizes Heather Fidel.
The fire chief position is currently an annual elected position in this town. The passage of this article will change the term to a 3-year position, which is consistent with other major elected positions in this town. Turnover can be costly in a leadership position, and it would not always be beneficial to the town in terms of morale, cohesion, or leadership. This department head is responsible to write, develop, monitor multi-year grants, and therefore the community benefits from the experience and consistency of having a single person in place to manage the grants of this department. Thank you.
Article 16, further question, comment, consideration?
I'm just looking for a point of clarification on this, whether when this would take effect, would this take effect with March or the following meeting?
Following. And the articles are already written, the terms are already advertised for this year. Does not have any impact. Other questions, comments, considerations? Motion to close further discussion of Article. Karen Brown, seconded. Tom, I keep forgetting.
David Curtis.
David Curtis. He's the third second. He's also seconded every other motion, and I keep looking up and going. One needs to make one. Okay. All those in favor of closing discussion, opposed? We have closed discussion Article 16. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 16 on the second session ballot as it was read. At this time, I'll take a motion to restrict further reconsiderations of Articles 15 and 16. Tom, second by David. See, you got you on the record. All those in favor? Opposed? You have restricted reconsideration on Articles 15 and 16. Moving on to Article 17. To see if the town will vote under the authority of RSA 80:80, Roman numeral B, to retain the public use 5 former subdivision lots located on Class 6 portion of Winding Road as conveyed to the town by tax collector deed, which property has since been voluntarily merged into one lot of approximately 5.5 acres by action of the town and the planning board. These lots were formally identified in the town records as map 41 lots 68.11, 68.12, 68.13, 68.14, 68.15 properties.
This slide is a typo.
This property is to be dedicated to the conservation purposes of public access, and approval of this article shall authorize the town to convey a conservation easement on this property to a qualified nonprofit conservation organization for stewardship. Majority vote required. Been recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. I'll entertain a motion to open Article 17 for discussion. Tom Gray, seconded by Maureen Steer. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your ballots. Opposed? We are discussing Article 17. The moderator recognizes Andy Ross.
Really what this warrant article is saying is that there's five acres that we've already merged, and this warrant article would give the permission to open it up to public use and to put it in conservation use. I think that this project is in the ninth inning, second out. We've had a lot of good people working on it. And, you know, I'm for this warrant article pass, and I think that once this is done, I've seen some familiar faces. We've just taken a walk a couple of months ago to look at the property with some of the familiar faces in the room. And once this project is done, it's going to be a great additive to the town for taking hikes and walks, and it's just going to be a great resource, not only for the town, but for the school, and so it's an exciting project. If you have any questions about it, we have one of our committee members here, Karen Cohen, that will do this about to answer any questions.
This is just a question based on the comment that you made about the access to schools. Is there any cost involved in maintenance of this property?
No, go ahead, Karen, but I just don't want to.
Hi, I'm Karen Colette, and we have been working with the school board, and we've opened up the discussion of them using the property as a nature school. We do not anticipate or plan any tax impact as far as maintaining. We're actively working to put together a volunteer system to clean up the trails, keep the trails maintained, and that's our plan at this point. If it has any additional questions.
Thank you, Karen. Further questions?
Richard Glover. My main concern is that this property is going to be left open for all forms of public access, public use, and recreation, specifically hunting purposes.
Questions? Can anybody answer that question?
And you do raise a valid question. I will tell you that that is a topic that still is being discussed. I can't tell you one way or the other. We've had multiple opinions on both sides, you know, of the aisle. We will be having further discussions on that. So I understand the concerns.
Virginia.
Virginia Long, I want to add to Karen's comment that placing a conservation easement on this property, this 5-acre property, will not state one way or the other whether hunting will be allowed. That will not be part of the easement. It will be up to the town as owner of the property to decide, and the town can decide one way or the other at any time to put it, to allow hunting or not to allow hunting, or to reserve it for only bow hunting, or whatever the town wants to do. The town will still be owner of the property. The conservation easements almost never address the question of hunting, and certainly that it will not be restricted in the easement on this property.
Mr. Lower. Then the question would also then go, when or who will decide on that, and if it is the Board of Selectmen or the town in this instance now, can that be reversed a year or 2 or 3 down the road with a new Board of Selectmen?
We always have
It can be decided every year then? Okay.
Down in Hampton, they have a town forest called 12 shares, and it's 200+ acres, made up of many, many tiny shares. And this year, there's an article on the warrant to restrict discharge of weapons, because the selectmen voted that all hunting, or legal hunting hours of as published by the New Hampshire Fish and Game were available. And they didn't, apparently none of them hunt, because they didn't realize that there's an open season on woodchucks, so you can shoot woodchucks all year long. So every time the police were called down after somebody was playing with a 22, and they went to ask them, hey, you have to stop shooting. He says, no, I'm hunting woodchucks. Okay. So guess what? Just as long as you have a valid hunting license, you can shoot. And then somebody says, well, you can't shoot at night. There's an open season. Well, there is a season on coyote hunting at night during the winter. So guess what? Not that somebody went down there 12 o'clock midnight. I think that's pretty nice. But so, to your point, Dick, yes, it can be revisited every single year. And apparently it is being revisited in other communities every single year. As a noise and pollution ordinance. So, further discussion, questions, comments? Not seeing any. Entertain a motion to close further discussion. Article 17 made by Mr. Brown, second by Mr. Cameron. All those in favor of the motion to close Article 17 for further discussion. All those opposed? You have closed Article 17 for discussion. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 17 on the second session ballot as it was originally read. Point of order, question. Chief, Nick Murray, you handed me a piece of paper. Was it for Article 18 or 19 that you wanted this amendment for? 18. 18, okay. I wrote down the wrong article. I thought it was 19. 18. Yes. All right, let me read Article 18. Milton Disc Incorporation is submitted by petition. To see if the town will vote that the town of Milton be disincorporated and a trustee appointed with authority to terminate the affairs of the corporation, sell and convey its property, real and personal, pay the debts of the town, and deposit the surplus of the proceeds of the property in the Stratford County Treasury to be there disposed of for the improvement of roads in the vicinity of which the town is situated. Such.
We need to see it. Yeah.
There is no slide.
It's a petition warrant article.
There is no copies though.
There are competition. I'm going to pause for a second while we
Anybody else?
All right, I will continue. Reading halfway down. Such proceeds shall be distributed by the trustee to the respective county in the proportion that the population of the town within such county or to the total population of the county according to the most recent regular or special federal census. If a majority of the qualified electors voting thereon votes for disincorporation, then the statute shall by an order enter the record declare the town disincorporated and shall proceed in the manner described in ours. Paragraph 1 of this article, majority vote is required. It's not recommended by the Board of Selectmen 0 to 3. Is there a motion to open this article for discussion? Mr. Dragg? Second. Ms. Baker? Ms. Baker? I always call her Ms. Baker, don't I?
I'm Miss Baker, she's Mrs. Baker. So it does matter.
Oh, it does matter. I've gotten grayer and older, so it does matter now. Mrs. Baker, thank you for your clarification. So we have a motion on the floor, made and seconded. Really getting into the issue. All those in favor of discussing this particular article, raise your ballots. Anyone opposed to discussing this article? 1. The motion passes. Article 18 is on the floor. The town requested town attorney, Mr. Walter Mitchell, be recognized to discuss or comment on this article.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm interested to hear the discussion on this article. But the selectmen have asked me to comment first on if the voters happen to vote to approve this, would it be valid and what its effect would be? It would have no validity whatsoever, it would have no effect. And the reason is that the town doesn't have the authority to disincorporate itself. The town only has the authority that has been given to it by the state legislature. And this legislature has not given this authority to the town. Towns are subdivisions of the state, and if if people thought it was a wonderful idea to use the word in this article, to disincorporate a particular town, the only way that that could be accomplished would be to go to the state and convince the state legislature to do away with the existence of the town. Thank you.
Further questions, comments? Commissioner brought forth the petition in the room. Does he or she wish to speak? Huh? Okay. Yeah, I only asked it not to call someone off, but just to be curious as to the wording behind the petition. Mr. Brown?
Thank you. The terrors of being an English major. In next to the last line, should it, presuming that it were illicit, should it not read a judgment of a court of competent jurisdiction?
Well, at this point, that's the question. So.
Just information.
I do have an amendment presented by Mr. Nick Marie. That is to add to the wording, and I would state that this is probably at the end of the article. The town has been advised that this article is not valid, period. Is there a second to that amendment?
Second.
Nancy, Aaron Brown. So we have an amendment on the floor. Does anyone wish to speak to the amendment? Do you choose to vote on the amendment? Question to vote on the amendment to Article 18 has been moved. I will, at your leisure, I will not read the whole article again, just to say that at the end.
Excuse me, Mr. Jacob.
Yes, go ahead.
Should we, in that, what does the amendment say?
The amendment reads, the town has been advised, I insert that this article is not valid, period.
And should that amendment,
Next to the back of the room.
okay, should that not say by the town attorney or
Yeah,
some
legally, yes.
clarification in it? It's your amendment, so I'll just.
I will add that, yeah.
So that's a friendly amendment?
Sure.
Mary?
Yep.
Is the town attorney okay with that extra wording?
It's your amendment.
Go for it.
Well, are you okay with the fact that he's quoting what you said it's not legally?
Fine. And we can change attorneys tomorrow or whatever. My point is, it's not really, it's his legal opinion, but there's an right. So, let me reread the amendment. The town has been advised that this article is not valid by the town attorney.
The town has been advised by the town attorney that this amendment is not valid. Yes. The town has been advised by the town attorney that
Okay.
this amendment is not valid.
That this article is not valid.
Excuse me, this article.
So you want it to go before that. The town has been advised
Aye.
by the town attorney that this article is not valid.
Yes.
Period. Okay. That's what we wanted tonight. Especially late in the day. Okay, so that's the amendment by the proponents. Move the question. It's already been decided. I We read it twice, wrong, twice. All those in favor of this amendment to this article, please raise your hands. Anyone opposed? No one is opposed, so the amendment carries. So, does anyone wish that I reread? Well, no. Thank you. Good question. Thank you. Thanks for laughing. Good question.
You have 20 minutes. You'll get it right.
I'll get it right. 20 minutes. You can imagine I got to do this. We got to do this. Okay. Motion made to close Article 18 for discussion by Mr. Gray, second by Mr. Cameron. If there were no further amendments. All those in favor of the motion, raise your ballots. Opposed? Close the discussion. None? Okay. You have one? Oh, okay. All right. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant article 18 on the second session ballot as amended. Motion to restrict reconsideration of Articles 17 and 18. Do I have a motion? Mr. Gray, second by Maureen Steer. All those in favor of restricting reconsiderations, Articles 17 and 18 only. Anyone opposed? My motion carries. Article 19, Keno games, submitted by petition. Shall we allow the operation of Keno games within the town? Majority vote required, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. Is there a motion made to open Article 19 for further discussion? Mr. Gray, second by Maureen Steer. All those in favor of discussing Article 19, please raise your ballots. Anyone opposed to Article 19? We have one opposite. We are open on Article 19. The moderator recognizes the Selectman Ryan to vote and speak to the article. Slaughter.
So this is currently approved only with foreign establishments in New Hampshire. This article was to pass. The establishment must hold a valid liquor license. Keno 603 is subject to New Hampshire laws and New Hampshire Lottery Commission rules and regulations.
Questions, comments, considerations? Article 19 dealing with Keno games. Judy.
What is the benefit to the town?
Anyone answer that question?
Any monetary benefit?
Well, it supports kindergarten.
Okay.
So that's, yes, so that's one reason. We do have full-time kindergarten in the town, so. Yes, and it also can increase revenues for the establishments.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Dude?
The counter one, what's the negative?
You can't pay taxes.
Mrs. Brown?
What is the negative? One answer is that on a statewide basis, you are claiming that full-time kindergarten is a valuable thing to the state if it is supported by Canada. That's one thing to consider. The second thing to consider is 52 weeks in a year. Start out, first 2 weeks, you spend $20 on Keno. We'll say you don't. Give me that $40, and the next 50 weeks, you take your $20 and put it in the bank. At the end of the year, it will have cost you $40 to have a
$1,000 in the bank. The other way of doing it is to accept the best odds that Keno has, which is 4 to 1. When you pay $1, you can win $2 25% of the time. At the end of 1 year, you will have $500. It will cost you $1,000 to get there. Try that now. The Keno is an attempt. This is my public education prejudice, absolutely raw and simple. The legislature is prepared to send $63 million of public education funding to private sources. Keno will bring in a net of 8.5 for this town. That will represent about $37,000 for the 30 kindergarten students that we have. $20 on 2,500 tax bills will do as much and keep us out of that. Thank you.
Questions, comments, considerations, Article 19. Not seeing any, sorry, Tom. Thank you.
Just a comment, the State Lottery Commission sent a representative, I think, the last selectmen's meeting. If she had lots to say about it, it's recorded on YouTube if you wanted to watch. She talked about the benefits of the town and benefits of the businesses. I don't remember what she talked about or what was discussed about the negative stuff.
Thank you. Question asked, motion made to close Article 19 for the discussion by Bruce, second by Maureen. Here, all those in favor of closing the discussion on Article 19? Motion closed. We have closed discussion on Article 19. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 19 on the second session ballot as read. Is there a motion to restrict further reconsideration of Article 19? Mr. Gray, second by Maureen. Ms. Deere, all those in favor of restricting reconsideration? Anyone opposed? Only one in the nay, the rest in the affirmative. You have restricted reconsideration of the article. My notes say, is there in fact any other business which we legally become before the meeting? Mr. Brown?
A motion to thank the moderator.
Motion denied.
Was there a second?
We didn't get a second.
I just want to be perfectly clear, I want to be sure that I understand. If an article is approved today as written, it cannot be changed, even if there's a mistake in it. Am I correct?
If the motion,
If everything was done?
and we restricted reconsideration of those motions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
There's motion to 5 other people, we are adjourned. This closes the town delivery session. Remember, school reconvenes 10 or 15 minutes. Get some food out of
Bob, you want your jacket?